Chapter 1339. This was Carolyn's ultimate plan, an absolute trump card. Not to mention that Su Yun and the others would never dare to hurt her again. Even Matthew's resolute heart had collapsed in an instant. Other than cursing the other party for being shameless in their hearts, Lin Gu and the others could do nothing. To lay their hands on a woman who was very likely to become the mother of a child? They really couldn't do it. If they didn't do it well, 2 lives would be lost. The child was innocent. Carolyn knew that she had grasped the key point. Regardless of whether or not she would be pregnant with Matthew's child, she had to escape first and think about other things at length. Believe me, whether you come back or not, I will raise the child. Relying on a child that definitely didn't exist now and might not exist in the future, Carolyn escaped from Su Yun and the others' encirclement unscathed. Once again, she calmly left this place. Brother, are we really going to let her go just like that? Lin Gu said unwillingly, the probability of her saying that it's extremely low. We don't even know if she's talking nonsense. It's not that I don't care if that woman is pregnant with Brother Matthew's child. Even if she really is pregnant this time, she doesn't even have the embryonic form of the child in her stomach. If Brother Matthew cares about the child, then all the more we should take her down and let her give birth to the child in Huaxia and keep it in Huaxia. She can't possibly raise a good child like that, can she? Of course, Su Yun also wanted to catch her. However, if Carolyn was really pregnant, it would be easier for the Americans to bite back. Her relationship with Matthew was originally unclear. If she insisted that they were lovers, Su Yun and the others would be violating her rights and controlling her personal freedom by capturing her. Perhaps the international community would even think that even Matthew was being controlled by Huaxia. Once they were in that predicament, Huaxia would have no way to explain anything. Su Yun knew very well what kind of pressure the world's public opinion could bring to a country. Huaxia had always been an elegant gentleman in this world, and many countries admired Huaxia's image of being open and aboveboard, not fearing power. However, once this opportunity was seized and he was slandered, he would be labeled as a hypocrite. It would be difficult for him to make a comeback. Because of the rise of Huaxia, many countries were trying to create negative public opinion about Huaxia. Su Yun absolutely could not let any such possibility exist. He absolutely could not let anyone have a hold on him. At that time, despicable small countries like the Japanese would be the ones to gloat. They would definitely help the United States promote the Huaxia threat and slander the situation faced by Turtle Island and Huangsha Island as Huaxia's power. Don't lose sight of the big picture for the small. Su Yun motioned for Lin Gu to calm down. Maybe this is what the other party is planning. Once we fall into their trap, it will be over for us to turn back. This matter could only be left to Matthew to make his own choice. What was now to be tested was Matthew's willpower. No matter what choice he made, it would be the right one for him. His motherland was important to him, and his children were equally important to him. However, at this moment, Matthew no longer had the ability to think clearly. His mind was a complete mess. He really had no idea what to do. He didn't want to think about this problem. Once he thought about this choice, the headache felt like it was going to tear his entire head apart. What kind of choice was the right one? Send Matthew back first. He needs enough time to calm down now, Su Yun said. No one should disturb him during this period of time. Let him figure things out himself. Since Carolyn left those words just now, I believe she won't be stupid enough to take the initiative to provoke us again. After sending Matthew back to the secret military research center, Su Yun directly returned to the Dragon Brigade with his brothers. The research center had quite strict security measures. There were special forces members guarding it, so there was no need to worry about anything happening there. Matthew had to learn to face this problem on his own, so Su Yun decisively left. After returning to the Dragon Brigade, Su Yun briefly explained the matter to Wan Guangxiao and Wang Yi, and also expressed his own opinion. When Wan Guangxiao and Wang Yi heard this, they were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. In order to get Matthew, the American government's agents were really unscrupulous. They even used the love card, the emotional card, and even the non-existent family card. I can only say that the Americans are really determined to get him. Wang Guangxiao smiled bitterly. They are really prepared to make a big deal out of this. The group of hooligans led by the National Defense Bureau not only likes to play spy infiltration and eavesdrop on secrets, but also plays so many despicable methods. It seems that I guessed right. It is indeed that old man who is directing their operations. Who? Su Yun was already very interested in the person behind the scenes. Now that he heard Wang Guangxiao say this, his interest was even stronger. Who was this person? Even Wang Guangxiao had a bitter smile on his face when he mentioned him. Wang Yi frowned and looked at Wang Guangxiao. He was a little unhappy. You mean, that Adler? Other than him, who else would be so unscrupulous? Wang Guangxiao smiled. I dare to bet that the few bottles of special liquor you secretly buried in the rear courtyard of the brigade, who knows how many years old, the guy behind them is that old bastard Adler. Do you dare to bet with me? Let's bet on those few bottles of wine. Ha ha ha. Wang Yi looked at Wang Guangxiao in surprise. When did you know that I buried those few bottles of wine? Hey, did you catch the main point of my words? Wang Guangxiao quickly said, the main point of my words is that bastard Adler, not those few bottles of wine. No wonder. I clearly remember that I buried 10 bottles. When I dug them up last year, there were only 8 bottles left. Wang Yi suddenly realized. So you already knew about that place. Those 2 bottles must have been taken by you. Otherwise, even if those stinking brats knew, they wouldn't dare to take them. Su Yun was speechless. They were talking about serious matters. How did they end up talking about wine? One must know that the team leader and deputy team leader had never been unreliable. Let's talk about serious matters first. Let's talk about Adler. Wang Guangxiao kept trying to change the topic and avoid talking about those few bottles of special aged wine. Adler is just a defeated opponent to you. You two have been fighting since young. When has he ever won? Wang Yi said. If my opponent is him, I really don't have to worry about anything. You definitely won't lose to him. What I'm most worried about now is my few bottles of wine. How many bottles have you ruined for me? Wang Guangxiao completely ignored Wang Yi. He turned his head and looked at Su Yun seriously. Where were we just now? Oh, you want to know about their team leader, right? They all call him General Adler. To put it bluntly, he is a defeated opponent of mine. I have been in contact with him since a long time ago. I have a deep understanding of that guy's insidiousness. Ha ha ha, I just didn't expect that after so many years, he should be as old as me. He can still do such a thing that can't be shown in public. Humph, he really hasn't improved. So you know him very well. Su Yun was stunned. He didn't expect to meet an old opponent. Chapter 1340. Speaking of the friendship between the Dragon Brigade's head commander Wang Guangxiao and General Ade, it would take more than 3 days and 3 nights to finish talking about it. The two of them knew each other, probably at the International Special Forces Training Center headquarters. The headquarters of the International Special Forces Training Center was an international training center for the exchange of experience and training of special forces, especially for those who had rich combat experience, outstanding strength, and commanding ability, who could lead the overall situation. To be able to be sent to the International Special Forces Training Center by the country for further study and training, it could be said that they were definitely the country's most valued military management talents. The International Special Forces Training Center had been around for a long time, and many advanced countries had already started sending in all kinds of top talents after World War I. Huaxia finally had the ability to train special forces after World War II ended, and only then did they officially start sending people to the International Special Forces Training Center. The first person to be sent was the young Wang Guangxiao. The International Special Forces Training Center had once doubted whether the person sent by Huaxia could be qualified. They did not believe that Huaxia also had a special force, and did not believe that the person sent by Huaxia could be called a special force soldier. Therefore, when Wang Guangxiao first entered the International Special Forces Training Center, he was quite rejected and pressured. No one believed that he was a special force soldier. Everyone thought that he was just a normal Huaxia soldier, and that Hua Xia was afraid of being laughed at for not having a Special Force soldier, so he had no choice but to pick a bigger and stronger person to be a Special Force soldier. 3 days later, Wan Guangxiao made everyone who doubted him shut their mouths. He used practical actions to tell everyone that Hua Xia not only had a special force like him, but also had a special force that could make people like you unable to catch up to him even if you galloped at full speed. On the first day, a guy from Western Europe wanted to take advantage of Wan Guangxiao by relying on his bigger body and stronger physique. Since this was the Special Forces Training Center, some of the rules were very special. For example, there was no so-called restrictive discipline here. If there was a conflict between two parties, there were no rules to resolve it. It was a matter of using one's fist to talk. Whoever had the harder fist would have a foothold. The International Special Forces Training Center was such a cruel place. It was a place only suitable for the strong to survive. Perhaps everyone who could come here was recognized as the best in their country, a supreme expert. But here, only the strongest of the strongest could be considered a true expert. Wan Guangxiao had used his strength to prove himself. He had only used one move. When the big guy from Western Europe was rejected for trying to snatch Wan Guangxiao's steak, he rushed over like a tiger. The first reaction of anyone facing such a mountain-like monster would probably be to dodge. The pressure of Mount Tai was too strong. However, Wan Guangxiao had no intention of dodging at all. He welcomed the Western European's attack with a heavy punch. Before the big guy from Western Europe could reach him, Chan Xiaolian's fist violently smashed into the guy's face. A mouthful of blood filled with teeth sprayed into the sky. Like a raging bull flying into the sky, the Western European man, who weighed 150 kilograms, fell straight down. He went into shock on the spot. Forget about fighting back, he did not even have the ability to open his mouth to speak. Wan Guangxiao knew the rules here. He sat down and slowly ate the rice and meat in front of him. In this place, food always needed to be protected. If you did not have enough to eat, you could go rob others. If you kept being robbed until you did not even have the strength to support yourself, that would prove that you did not deserve to stay here. If you could not even adapt to the most basic survival, how could you be qualified to be a Special Forces soldier? The next day, the big guy from Western Europe was sent back to his country. Because of Wan Guangxiao's punch, he could not even eat, let alone train. He should just obediently go home and wait. The outside world was too dangerous. Who would have thought that a country that had just experienced an invasion and a civil war would have such a powerful soldier? It was no wonder that Hua Xia could rise so quickly. Although Wan Guangxiao had shown the people present the consequences of snatching food from him on the first day, he still did not completely intimidate the individual people. There were still some people who thought that they were strong enough and did not put Wan Guangxiao in their eyes at all. It could be said that trouble came one after another. It seemed that everyone wanted to provoke this Special Forces soldier from Hua Xia. That kind of despise and contempt from the bottom of their hearts also angered Wan Guangxiao again and again. It was also at that time that Wan Guangxiao had an idea. He swore that one day, he would make Hua Xia's Special Forces the most powerful Special Forces in the world. Since ancient times, there had been a saying in Hua Xia that the masters were among the people. There were many people with superior strength, but it was difficult for them to bend to the rules. However, if they could be systematically trained and understood that the strength of a country was inseparable from the survival of a nation, there would always be people who would support him. As long as these people were systematically trained into a regular army, Hua Xia would have its first special forces. Of course, at that time, these were all just wishful thinking. But later, Wan Guangxiao still went through the learning process and made great contributions to Hua Xia's special forces. All of this was due to the knowledge he learned in the International Special Forces Training Center. And those who constantly provoked him, humiliated him, and stimulated and despised him to improve. The collapse of the big guy from Western Europe seemed to have stimulated the nerves of the other strong countries. Soon, Wan Guangxiao was subjected to all kinds of provocations. He was used to being provoked by all kinds of people who tried to snatch his food during meals. Usually, he would be subjected to all kinds of difficulties when he wanted to get anything. Even when he was taking a bath, there would always be people who would provoke him by throwing his soap on the floor. Obviously, these troublemakers all rolled back to their own countries in the end. In this training center with less than 1,000 people, Wan Guangxiao's name quickly spread throughout. It had only been a month since he came to the International Special Forces Training Center, but more than 30 cowards had rolled back to their own countries. One must know that these cowards who were beaten up by Wan Guangxiao were all bullies here before this. There were many people who were bullied by these people and returned to their own countries. Today, they had fallen to such a state, and it was definitely a well-deserved punishment. Finally, Wan Guangxiao's matter reached Adler's ears. Adler was definitely a big shot in the International Special Forces Training Center. Here, no one from any country dared to provoke him. Adler was the strongest warrior here, and his country was the United States, which was also the strongest country in the world. In this training center, the United States had the most military forces. This was because they were more advanced, and the country was richer, so they could afford the training fees. The people they arranged were all sharps who could be independent agents when they returned to their own countries. Whoever dared to provoke them, there was only one result, and that was to be forced to retreat. Therefore, in this training center, the United States was tyrannical. Although the strong people from some countries were strong enough, because they had the advantage in numbers, they could only suppress their anger. Even if they were robbed of their food, they would rather starve than provoke them. If they had to provoke them, they would probably face very serious consequences. They would gang up to bully you alone. Once this happened, it would be too difficult for a person to persist and survive here. Therefore, everyone would rather swallow their anger than explode. Finally, a month after Wan Guangxiao came here, the International Special Forces Training Center erupted with the biggest conflict in history. The leaders of the conflict were the representative of the United States, Adler, and the representative of the other countries, Wan Guangxiao. Today was a day of swamp training. Everyone had to rely on their own abilities to carefully cross the endless swamp. They could help each other, but once someone was trapped in the swamp and couldn't save themselves or seek help from others, only death would await them. Even if they died during this training mission, the training center would not take responsibility at all. Chapter 1341. The swamp training this time could indeed be described as a 9 out of 10 chance of survival. Once there was danger, it would be destructive. Once there was a situation, there was only one outcome, death. At least for Wan Guangxiao, that was the case. Because he was the only Hua Xia here, helping each other and the like, that was for people from the same country to hear. Who would help outsiders? In this place, it was already a blessing to not bully outsiders. It was simply impossible for them to cooperate with each other. Faced with such a situation, the Americans had the most advantage because they had a lot of people. Out of the close to 1,000 students in the Special Forces Training Center, about 15% were their people. In addition, there were those who only knew how to bootlick and the Japanese who recognized the Americans as their godfathers. These people added up to a rather large group. They were the only ones who didn't have anything to worry about when it came to crossing the swamp. Everyone else was worried sick. Those who could come here were naturally not afraid of death. But they would definitely only allow themselves to die for things like sacrificing their lives for their country. They would definitely not allow themselves to die in a training center. Ever since the swamp mission was issued, someone immediately suggested to the young General Adler that they wanted to deal with the Hua Xia who had been in the limelight recently. The person who suggested this idea was called Kento Ono. Although Japan, as a defeated country, did not have the right to have an army, they still set up some organizations in the name of self-defense. This Kento Ono was one of the few people that the Japanese had arranged to lead them. Kento Ono was very clear about the survival rules of this training center. So on the first day he came here, he did something very impressive. No one knew what kind of drug he fed Adler, but he immediately became Adler's favorite and became the most loyal lackey of the Americans in this training center. From then on, Kento Ono became extremely arrogant, especially towards people from other countries in Asia. He always thought that he was superior to others, and always thought that he was the best person in Asia. He was hated and looked down upon by many people. Those who could come here could be said to be at the level of a soldier king. They could accept the defeat of not being able to defeat others, but they could not accept being a lackey. This kind of thing, perhaps only the ignorant cabinet of Japan could cultivate such a talent. Kento Ono could even kneel in front of Adler in front of everyone without any hesitation. In the eyes of Westerners, kneeling for Asians was the highest form of showing their inferiority. So Adler was quite satisfied with this. In fact, Wan Guangxiao had always wanted to tell Adler that it was not Kento Ono who thought highly of him, but that the Japanese were weak since young. This kind of kneeling was a normal thing. No matter what, Kento Ono was a lackey. Kento Adler's side by side, naturally, he would often be thinking of some ideas to help Adler find some fun. Kento Ono of Japan of Japan of Japan of Japan of Japan under their cooperation, they were of Japan of Japan of Japan of Japan of Japan of Japan of life. These things had happened too many times, and many people still had lingering fears. In the underwater mission a month ago, under their joint efforts, many people who had offended them in words and deeds had their breathing tubes cut off in the process of diving and were buried at the bottom of the sea. Although they were the ones who did this, and everyone knew it, no one dared to stand up and say it. Everyone was afraid of their monthly death training, so they did not dare to speak carelessly. During the last death training, Wan Guangxiao had not arrived yet, so he did not participate. This swamp training was his first death training since he came to the International Special Forces Training Center. This death training was not just a title to scare people, and those who had experienced it knew it very well. Wan Guangxiao, who was participating in the death training for the first time, did not feel any fear. After all, it was his first time, so he really did not feel anything. But when they arrived at their destination, Wan Guangxiao was still shocked by the scene in front of him. They were directly brought to the Pantanal Swamp in the southern region of Mato Grosso, Brazil. This was the world's largest swamp. It covered an area of 25 million hectares. There were a lot of rivers, lakes, and plains in the swamp. The wetlands, grasslands, Amazon, and Atlantic forests were all representative ecosystems of South America. In addition to rich plant resources, the Pantanal Swamp also housed 650 species of birds, 230 species of fish, 95 species of mammals, 167 species of reptiles, and 35 species of amphibians. Due to the special natural conditions of the Pantanal Swamp, there were a lot of species. It was also a paradise for extremely aggressive crocodiles. They were not going to the Pantanal Swamp to experience the wetland scenery, plants, flowers, and birds, but to directly enter the Pantanal wetland's worst and most dangerous swamp. Perhaps many people would think that since this place was 25 million hectares, they could just come in and find a place where there was no one to sleep, and leave after the training. Wouldn't that be great? After all, no one would be following them, so once they entered the swamp, they could do whatever they wanted. Things were not that simple. There were a total of 978 people participating in the swamp survival training. In the center of the swamp, 978 badges of the Special Forces Training Center were scattered everywhere. Only those who found the badges in the swamp could be considered to have completed the training. Those who could not complete the training mission would immediately pack up and get out. They had to make room for the strong, and the weak could go back. Didn't it sound like a fantasy story? It must be a fantasy story. Maybe some of the badges had already sunk to the bottom. This was not impossible. After all, it was a swamp. Once this thing sank, how could they find it? No matter how big the badge was, it could not be the size of a palm, right? How could they find it? Wasn't this an impossible task? At that time, someone raised an objection, saying that this was not reasonable at all. There would definitely be badges that sank, and it was impossible for everyone to get a badge. There were 978 people, so there would definitely be badges that would not be able to get one. The answer they received was so shocking. It was impossible for everyone to reach the center of the swamp. Some people would die at the beginning of the swamp. Some people would die in the middle of the swamp. Some people would die in the center of the swamp. Some people were unable to extricate themselves from the swamp because they were trapped in the swamp, and some people were eaten as lunch by the swamp crocodiles. Therefore, the number of people who died would be as many as the badges that sank. Just listen to this terrifying probability. Who wouldn't be terrified by this? If they really died in there, not even their bones would be left. This test was not only a test of personal ability, but also a test of teamwork. Therefore, the more people a small group had, the more advantageous it would be. The fewer people there were, the greater the danger. Even if it was a truth that everyone could see, Wan Guangxiao was not afraid at all. If he couldn't handle such a small thing, then what was the point of talking about a strong motherland? If he couldn't handle it, then let the motherland arrange for someone else. It was also shameful for him to waste funds here. Wan Guangxiao entered the Pantanal swamp with this mentality. Chapter 1342. It was also because of Wan Guangxiao's perseverance that he was able to get to where he was today, that the Dragon Brigade had reached the peak of the world's glory. That survival training in the swamp was the first time he had faced Adler head-on. That was the first time the two of them had clashed, and it was all because of Kento Ono's matchmaking. Regarding this, Wan Guangxiao had always wanted to thank Kento Ono. If it wasn't for Ono, if Kento had interfered and caused such a huge conflict between him and Adler, Wan Guangxiao really didn't know that he had such great potential. He had always thought that his potential was forced out by Adler's gang. After entering the Pantanal wetlands, everyone could only choose one essential item for marching. The first choice was a tactical dagger, the second choice was enough water and food for 3 days, and the third choice was a signal gun. If they wanted to give up, they just had to fire and they would be rescued. If they didn't choose the signal gun, with a gun, there was no opportunity to give up training. There were only 2 outcomes. Either they found the badge and completed the training, or they stayed in the swamp to feed the crocodiles. Everyone was faced with a difficult choice. If they chose the signal gun, they would undoubtedly be scolded as a coward. In their hearts, this was indeed the behavior of a coward. Therefore, in order to not be regarded as a coward, no one was willing to pick up the signal gun. If someone chose the signal gun, it really meant that their country really shouldn't have chosen them to come to this place for training. This place was not a place for a coward. Wan Guangxiao's choice was also very difficult. In this vast swamp, food and water were too important. Since they would give them enough food and water for 3 days, it meant that they couldn't complete the training mission in a short time. The badge was definitely not that easy to find. In other words, the central swamp was not that easy to enter. 3 days was the fastest he could go. It might even take him 5 or 7 days. Many people had this idea, so almost half of them chose water and food. Most of them thought that as long as they had enough water and food, they would be able to survive. Only by surviving would they have the possibility of completing the training mission. Just as Wan Guangxiao was hesitating whether to choose water and food, he saw a large number of trainees from the United States choose the dagger. Adler's biggest lackey, Kento Ono, also chose the dagger. Wan Guangxiao didn't understand. Their gang was the biggest. As long as they had enough water and food, and had a certain level of teamwork, it wouldn't be difficult for them to get the badge. But why did they choose the tactical dagger? Could it be that they had some other purpose? Thinking of this, Wan Guangxiao suddenly, everything in this place could be snatched by force. If you want something that you don't have in your hands, you can fight for it with your own strength. It's not against any rules. Therefore, these people didn't need water or food at all. So many people had already chosen food and water, so why should they still choose? As long as they had weapons, they would be able to snatch enough water and food from others. They didn't care about the life and death of others. As long as they could survive, as long as they could complete the training mission, everything else had nothing to do with them. The life and death of others was insignificant in the eyes of these people. It could even be said that, in their eyes, other people might just be prey to play this game with them. Those who could come to the International Special Forces Training Center had a keen sense of smell. Not only did Wan Guangxiao smell the danger, but others also smelled the danger. From time to time, people would stand up and choose the dagger. They didn't want to be the target of the Americans and Japanese dogs with water and food. If they were targeted by them, it would be difficult to say whether they could survive before they could reach the central swamp. It was Wan Guangxiao's turn to make a choice. Wan Guangxiao stepped forward and stuffed the dagger into his back without hesitation. If anyone dared to touch him, he would not be polite. It didn't matter if they were Americans or Japanese, as long as they dared to provoke him in this swamp, he would show them what the Huaxia people were capable of. He would make them understand that they could provoke anyone but the Huaxia people. Adk-kun, did you see that Huaxia person? He is so arrogant, taking the dagger as soon as he stepped forward. He even turned around and gave you a fierce look. This was Kento Ono's favorite trick, to kill with a borrowed knife. If he didn't like someone, he wouldn't provoke them himself. Instead, he would tell Adk-kun how the other party didn't like him and borrow Adk-kun's strength to suppress them. Every time, he would successfully use Adk-kun's competitive nature to teach the people he wanted to teach a lesson to. It wasn't that Adk-kun was stubborn and didn't understand that Kento Ono was using him. Adk-kun had always been a fighter. Since Kento Ono could constantly find excuses for him to teach others a lesson, he didn't care and didn't expose Kento Ono's little scheme. Adk-kun liked people like Kento Ono who flattered him and kept saying nice things in his ear. That feeling made him feel good, very good. That was why he kept Kento Ono by his side. Otherwise, why would he let a Japanese follow him? He was an American. The supreme American. In his eyes, the Japanese were the same as the Huaxia people. They were all sick men of East Asia. In Asia, who do you think is more powerful, the Huaxia people or you Japanese people? Adk-kun smiled and looked at Wan Guangxiao who was not far away. He stuffed the dagger into his back pocket and turned around to ask Kento Ono. Kento Ono was stunned and then answered without thinking, "Of course it's us Japanese people who are more powerful. They are Chinese pigs. How can they be compared to the people of the Japanese Empire? Of course, they can't be compared to you. Since you think so, then you will be responsible for getting rid of him during this swamp training mission." Adk-kun sneered. To be honest, he really didn't like Wan Guangxiao. This was because this Huaxia person had stolen too much of the limelight in just a month's time at the training center. In the past, when the members of the training center were gossiping, it was all about Adk-kun. Whether it was good or bad, at least the center of the conversation was Adk-kun. Not this damned Wan Guangxiao in front of him. This person must be eliminated. However, he didn't want others to say that he was jealous. As long as he made a move, everyone would say that he was jealous of Wan Guangxiao for stealing his limelight. Since Kento Ono was so confident that the Japanese were more powerful than the Huaxia people, then let him go. If Kento Ono could win, then it would be even better. He would have one less thorn in his side. If Kento Ono lost, then it didn't matter. It would give him a reason to make a move on Wan Guangxiao. After all, everyone knew that Kento Ono was his lackey, his henchman. Huaxia had a good saying, one had to look at the owner before beating the dog. If Wan Guangxiao dared to make a move on Kento Ono, then it meant that he looked down on him and provoked him first. At that time, he would make a move on this Huaxia person and it would be justified. In the swamp, there were some things that no matter how ruthless they were, no one would spread it out. Because these people with long tongues would all die in this place. Kento Ono was dumbfounded. Asking him to deal with Wan Guangxiao? He knew what kind of people Wan Guangxiao had gotten rid of in the past month. Each one was more ruthless than the last, each one stronger than the last. Him going to deal with Wan Guangxiao? Wasn't that seeking his own death? Chapter 1343. However, Kento Ono did not dare to disobey Adler's orders. He knew very well that no matter how much he fawned on Adler, no matter how much he fawned over him, disobeying Adler's orders was tantamount to betrayal. No one knew better than Kento Ono what betraying Adler meant here. He had witnessed too many scenes of Adler dealing with traitors. There were many who did not listen to his orders and did not dare to make a move on certain people. Today, Kento Ono was facing such a difficult problem. He gripped the dagger in his hand tightly. He could only bet his life on Wan Guangxiao. After officially entering the swamp, Wan Guangxiao found that the situation here was even worse than he had imagined. 978 people were scattered to every corner of the Pantanal swamp. Even if they wanted to seek help from their companions, they had to at least be alive to see them first. Wan Guangxiao took out the dagger he had chosen and carefully explored every inch of the pantanal swamp. Although he had not yet entered the central swamp, the surrounding wetlands already gave him the feeling of walking on thin ice. It was a terrible feeling. Wan Guangxiao was scared that he could be swallowed by the land under his feet at any time. He was always ready to fight against the god of death. For the rest of the day, Wan Guangxiao almost did not sleep. He explored step by step. During the day, he used the sunlight to determine the direction. Then, he used the marks on the trees to determine the path he had taken. This way, he could prevent himself from getting lost. During the day, it was better. At least he could see his surroundings clearly. But at night, it was the most difficult time. He could not even see his fingers in front of him. There was no lighting equipment. Plus, the swamp was foggy and humid. It was impossible for people to survive in such an environment. But since they were special forces, their training was naturally not normal. Death was a problem they would always face at any time. Therefore, the ultimate goal of all their training was to face death and overcome their fear. Only by facing the challenge of fear and death could they truly transform into a completely different warrior. Wan Guangxiao held the dagger in his hand, quietly waiting for the danger that could come at any time. At night, all kinds of strange animal roars could be heard from time to time in this vast swamp. The sounds of those strange animals were so creepy. Wan Guangxiao found a large tree that he could perch on and climbed up. This was the only safe place he could think of. It was definitely impossible to sleep in the swamp, but even in the tree, Wan Guangxiao could not sleep well. He was not sure if there were any carnivores in this place that would climb up the tree. Moreover, Wan Guangxiao didn't know whether the crocodile would climb up the tree or not. He closed his eyes in a daze and soon felt a strange murderous aura. However, this murderous aura was deliberately hidden. Only a human could emit such a murderous aura. It was definitely not something that an animal without intelligence could deliberately hide. Wan Guangxiao realized that he was being watched. Could it be Adler and the others? But he did not choose to eat or drink. There was no need for them to compete with him. There was no benefit at all. Wan Guangxiao was not the kind of person who liked to play tricks. Therefore, when he sensed the danger, he did not wait for the ambusher to appear and then ambush them. Instead, he sat up and shouted angrily, "Who is it? Come out!" After being shouted at by Wan Guangxiao, the murderous aura instantly disappeared. Soon, a figure appeared on a tree not far away. Wan Guangxiao confirmed that it was indeed a person and more or less relaxed. "Who is it?" "Wan Guangxiao, it's me. I'm Kento Ono." The figure finally spoke. Because of the fog and darkness, it was too difficult to distinguish a person's appearance. "I don't have any evil intentions. Please don't misunderstand. I have absolutely no enmity towards you. I swear." When Wan Guangxiao heard that it was Kento Ono, he quickly frowned. Wan Guangxiao had to admit that he really did not like this Japanese. Or rather, he did not like any Japanese. "What are you doing here? If you want to get something from me, then you've come to the wrong person. I have neither water nor food here." The first day that Wan Guangxiao spent in the swamp, he drank the river water and ate something that looked like a lizard. Although it didn't taste very good, judging from the meat, it wasn't poisonous. The protein content should be quite high. No matter what, at least his stomach was full. In this kind of environment, no one could ask for any taste. As long as they did not starve to death and successfully completed the mission, it was good enough. "I'm not here to steal. I'm here to share with you. I have water and food here." As Kento Ono spoke, he took out the things in his hands and showed them to Wan Guangxiao. "We're all Asians. We should help each other. Please believe that I have absolutely no evil intentions. Really." Seeing the things in Kento Ono's hands, Wan Guangxiao was really surprised. This guy actually wanted to share food and water with him? It was simply a fantasy. What do you mean?" Wan Guangxiao said. "You want to take out the water and food in your hands and share it with me? This is not the style of you Japanese. Normally, you should be close to that guy Adler. Now that you're here to curry favor with me, I won't accept it. I advise you that if you have any ideas, it's best to stop. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll definitely punish them. Kento Ono was still slowly approaching Wan Guangxiao. I'm really here to share water and food with you. If you don't trust me, then I'll put down the things and leave. I saw that you only took a dagger, but I didn't see you take any water or food. It's not that easy for us to get close to the central swamp. You can't possibly not eat anything. This is my business. I don't need you to interfere. Wan Guangxiao said. I also saw your choice. You also only chose a dagger. If you didn't choose water and food, where did you get your water and food? Obviously, this meant that people had already been harmed by them. Even Kento Ono could get food. One could only imagine how much water and food Adler's group had gotten. This was only the first day. So many people had already been harmed by them? Thinking of this, Wan Guangxiao could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. People who chose water and food were the most cautious. They definitely wanted to survive and survive. But they definitely would not have thought that by choosing food and water, they would be targeted by their own people. They would then be robbed and even harmed. These people were really too much. These things really have nothing to do with me. These were all done by Adler and his group. Kento Ono said. I also don't want them to do this. I tried to persuade them not to do this. Since we chose a dagger, we can use the dagger to hunt animals that can be eaten. But they didn't listen. In that case, these things were indeed stolen. Wan Guangxiao said. I'm right. I don't eat stolen things. You can leave. No matter what, I've already brought them here. You shouldn't reject my good intentions. Kento Ono had already walked to Wan Guangxiao's side. At least, drink some water. Water can still be found in this place. Although it was also stolen, it's not to the point where people can't find water. Drink some. I'm sincerely here to make friends with you. Chapter 1344. Wan Guangxiao chuckled as he took the bottle and drank a mouthful of water. Since it was delivered here, he might as well leave the bottle behind. At the very least, he would have a container to hold the water once he found a water source. The moment Wan Guangxiao drank the first mouthful of water, a sinister and cunning smile appeared on Kento Ono's face. The corners of his mouth curled up, causing Wan Guangxiao to feel the urge to slap him. Is there something in the water? Ha 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 ha, I'm afraid it's too late for you to react now. Kento Ono sneered. There is indeed something in the water, something that can make you obediently close your eyes. Just as Kento Ono was getting carried away, Wan Guangxiao dug his finger into his throat and vomited out a pile of things. He sneered as he stood up. What if I vomit it out? Can you still make me obediently close my eyes? Kento Ono was completely stunned on the spot. This guy actually used such a simple method to neutralize the drug that he had painstakingly concocted. Kento Ono, have you heard of this saying? Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. Wan Guangxiao said indifferently. This saying has already been proven by Hitler, Mussolini, and that bastard Hideki Tojo. Now, do you still want to try it yourself? Kento Ono stared blankly at Wan Guangxiao. Wan Guangxiao's mind was very clear, and there was no sign of him being unconscious. He was not affected by the drug at all. I gave you a chance to scram, but you still used the excuse of being friends with me to cause trouble for me. Wan Guangxiao said. It's the same logic as when Hideki Tojo used the excuse of **** to invade Asian countries. If he loses, you will definitely lose as well. Kento Ono sneered. He, you are very shrewd, Wan Guangxiao. You have always been wary of me. Even when you took the bottle, you still did not believe me. Of course I won't believe you, Wan Guangxiao sneered. Tonight, our visibility is definitely not more than 10 meters. It's impossible to tell who's who from 10 meters away, but you were able to find me and bring me water and food. Can I trust you? Why not? Kento Ono was unwilling to give up. He wanted to know why Wan Guangxiao suspected him. The fact that you were able to confirm that the person in the dark was definitely me despite being so far away only proves one thing. You've been eyeing me since you could still see people's faces clearly during the day. Wan Guangxiao said, "It's just that we don't have a chance to make a move, and we're much more vigilant during the day." Kento Ono sneered, "At least you have a brain. Since you've already shed all pretense of cordiality with me, then don't blame me. I'll be frank with you. If you obediently come back with me now and submit to Adler, then I'll spare your life. If you insist on resisting, then tomorrow you will be attacked by even more of Adler's subordinates. At that time, you won't even have the chance to regret. If you come with me today, maybe I can help you plead for leniency." Wan Guangxiao spat. "Can't you speak the truth? Kento Ono, you really make me feel like laughing. Do you really think of yourself as someone by Adler's side?" Kento Ono's face twitched. Wan Guangxiao was right. He was not even a dog by Adler's side. "Adler coming to cause trouble for me was probably your idea," Wan Guangxiao smiled faintly. "Even if you die in my hands, he won't feel sorry for you." Instead, it became an excuse for him to make a move on me. "Because everyone knows that you're just a dog by his side. Kento Ono, you always think that you're very smart and can make use of Adler's power. In fact, that's not the case. Adler is much smarter than you." Kento Ono's sore spot was poked and he suddenly shouted, "I don't care what you say. I'm going to take your life today. I'm afraid you don't have that ability." As Wan Guangxiao spoke, he had already pulled out his dagger. Facing this despicable Japanese, Wan Guangxiao did not hesitate to strike first. If he wanted him to die, then he would die thoroughly. He did not even give him a chance to fight back. Kento Ono was not a person without any ability. Facing Wan Guangxiao's sudden attack, he reacted immediately and quickly retreated to avoid the fatal stab. Wan Guangxiao realized that he was more or less affected by the medicinal properties of Kento Ono's water. His attack speed and reaction speed were slower than usual. If it was any other day, Kento Ono would not have been able to dodge his attack. One must know that in the International Special Forces Training Center, Wan Guangxiao's assassination speed was the fastest. The training center had a test to test one's assassination ability. Within a villa, they had to assassinate 18 hypothetical locations and rescue hostages. In this test, Wan Guangxiao was far ahead of the second place by nearly 5 seconds. 5 seconds. In this place, the opponents were all abnormal. 5 seconds was a time gap that would shock everyone. The second place was the American Adler, who was known as the strongest in the Special Forces Training Center. After Kento Ono dodged Wan Guangxiao's first attack, he instantly realized that this guy in front of him was still affected. His speed and explosive power were slightly slower, and it was because of this slight delay that he had the chance to escape. At this moment, fighting was tantamount to suicide. Wan Guangxiao had already spat out the water. The medicinal properties would only get weaker. If he continued to fight, the person who would die in the end would definitely be Kento Ono. After understanding this problem, Kento Ono completely entered escape mode. Wan Guangxiao chased him in this pitch-black swamp for nearly half an hour before giving up. The sky was too dark. Moreover, they had already traveled for a day. They were getting closer and closer to the center of the swamp. There were already terrifying swamp pits on the ground that could completely suck people in. One wrong step and they might not be able to walk out again. After running for so long, Wan Guangxiao was worried that he would lose his sense of direction in the dark. While he could still rely on his memory and senses during the day to determine the direction, he decided to stop chasing and quickly make a mark. This was to prevent him from getting lost the next day. With such a large swamp fog and such a hazy night, he was afraid that the next day would be gloomy. When there was no sun, once his sense of direction was messed up, he might not be able to find his way again. Wan Guangxiao's guess was right. At 5 o'clock in the morning, before the sun had even risen, the sky began to pour. The rain was pouring down in torrents. The entire surface of the swamp had turned into a vast ocean. Anyone who could still make a clear judgment would be able to understand a simple truth. The ground beneath their feet had completely lost their sense of direction. No one could tell where the swamp pit that could swallow people was. As long as they reached the bottom of the tree, they would die. Moreover, a large number of crocodiles had appeared out of nowhere. They were all hiding in the muddy rain and mud. It was impossible to distinguish them with the naked eye. These aggressive carnivores were also very patient. If their prey did not reach a place where they had a 100% chance of landing a fatal blow, they would not easily attack. The bite force of a crocodile was huge and shocking. Even if these special soldiers were all called abnormal by ordinary people, they still could not avoid the terrifying bite force of a crocodile. Wan Guangxiao also did not dare to rashly walk to the bottom of the tree. He could only rely on his memory and senses to continue making marks. He tried to think of a way to pass through the trees, getting closer to the center of the swamp bit by bit. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not easily get down from the tree onto the muddy ground. The heavy rain continued for an entire day. Wan Guangxiao also cursed for an entire day. He did not eat anything for the entire day. When he was thirsty, he relied on drinking rainwater to quench his thirst. There was no place to catch food in this weather. At this moment, Wan Guangxiao regretted not choosing water and food. A large amount of energy had been lost, making his hunger more obvious than usual. It seemed that this training center was called the Hell Training Center by the entire world. After being here for a month, Wan Guangxiao had thoroughly experienced the power of hell today. Chapter 1345. The day's rain finally stopped in the evening. Without the sun, his body was damp and cold, and his hunger was unbearable. This was Wan Guangxiao's current situation. Of course, he was in a terrible mood right now. The person who provoked him at this time was definitely not a wise person. After confirming a safe place, Wan Guangxiao peeled off some tree bark and used the dry and flammable parts inside. He found 2 flints that could produce sparks and used the last of his patience to light a fire. Now, he had to dry his clothes first so that his body could retain as much heat as possible. Otherwise, he would get hungrier and hungrier. It was not easy to hunt for prey in this place at night. Once there was a fire in the dark, it would definitely attract the attention of living things. Animals were generally afraid of fire, so Wan Guangxiao wasn't worried that any ferocious beasts would appear. If they really did come, he would really have to thank them. He was just worried that there wouldn't be any meat to roast with such a good fire. Now, even if an 800-gene wild boar king came, he would fight it to the death for meat. The fire did not attract any ferocious beasts, but it attracted people who were even more terrifying than ferocious beasts. Finally, the first figure appeared. He slowly walked over from afar and gave a friendly signal to Wan Guangxiao. "Brother, I also need fire. Let's help each other. I have food here. If you have food, bring it over." Wan Guangxiao clenched the dagger in his hand as he spoke. It wasn't that he didn't trust the person in front of him, but after the incident with Kento Ono, it was difficult for Wan Guangxiao to trust anyone. His brothers weren't here. The best relationship between them could only be considered as the same batch of students. It was just a relationship between students. "Give me your food, and I'll let you warm up by the fire." Wan Guangxiao could not believe that the person in front of him chose his food. Maybe he also snatched it. Maybe there were drugs in his food. These were all possible dangers. "Okay, I'll give you food." The person slowly walked closer. He took out the food and expressed his goodwill. "You're that Hua Xia Wan Guangxiao, right? My name is Sawadika. I'm Thai." "So it's a Hindustani." Wan Guangxiao was taken aback. No matter what, since this guy had expressed goodwill, he would give him a chance. At this time, Sawatika had already handed over a whole piece of unopened compressed biscuit. Wan Guangxiao didn't stand on ceremony. He took it directly and opened the packaging. However, he was not in a hurry to eat. Instead, he broke off a piece and handed it to Sawatika. "You eat first." Sawatika was touched and smiled. "Thank you." Without hesitation, he took the hardtack that Wan Guangxiao returned and stuffed it into his mouth. From the looks of it, he seemed to be very hungry. Since he was so hungry, why wouldn't he eat the food? Seeing that the other party didn't have any adverse reactions after eating it, Wan Guangxiao was relieved and ate the other half of the compressed biscuit. He gulped down a few mouthfuls of water, hoping that the compressed biscuit would expand in his stomach. That way he would feel full. Sawatika was in a daze as he warmed himself by the fire. He stared blankly at the flames, his eyes lifeless. Wan Guangxiao also realized that the piece of compressed biscuit he had just handed over was the last bit of food he had left. He used the last of his consciousness to judge that compared to food, he needed the warmth of the fire more. That was why he decided to give the compressed biscuit to Wan Guangxiao without hesitation. Indeed, Sawatika's body was extremely lacking in heat. The cold feeling made it hard for him to hold on. If he didn't want to collapse in the swamp at night, Wan Guangxiao's fire was a necessity that could keep him going. As for food, at most, he would think of a way to catch small animals that could be eaten here tomorrow. If there was really nothing to eat, he could eat even the wild grass and tree bark. Did you choose the food from the start? Wan Guangxiao suddenly asked. He remembered that if he chose food and water, he would get 9 pieces of compressed biscuits. It was impossible for a person to eat so extravagantly in 2 days. After Sawatika heard Wan Guangxiao's question, he was startled and slowly raised his head. It was me. It was my first choice. Only 1 piece left? Wan Guangxiao asked again. Sawatika's face was a little embarrassed. I met Adler and the others. They asked me to hand over the food. Otherwise, I would be. Obviously, as a soldier in the Special Forces, no one was a softie. No one wanted to give in. There was no other way. I couldn't deal with so many of them alone. Sawatika's expression was dim. But I couldn't give up. I didn't want to disappoint the country's expectations of me. I didn't want to disappoint my family's pride in me. I could only choose to stay alive. If I could survive, I would have a chance to get the badge and continue to stay in the training center. I didn't want to be driven away. I only hid this piece of compressed biscuit. The rest were taken by Adler and the others. This was the truth. Wan Guangxiao could see from his expression that this guy knew what could be exchanged with food, so he didn't hesitate to hand over the biscuit just now. Are you interested in forming a team? If we encounter trouble, we will fight together, find the badge together, and catch the food together. Wan Guangxiao said lightly, although I don't know you, I am also a person who doesn't want to disgrace his country, so I think we should be the same kind of people, right? If you can trust me, then form a team with me. He was not afraid of a godlike opponent, as long as he had a godlike teammate. Sawatika knew how powerful Wan Guangxiao was. He had heard about Wan Guangxiao every day for a month. Of course, he wouldn't refuse to form a team with such a godlike teammate. This was definitely not a trap. If you don't mind, I am willing. Sawatika said. I will definitely be able to trust you. I am the only Thai. One of my former companions was killed during deep diving training. Is what you just said true? Of course it's true. Wan Guangxiao said, otherwise, why would I return half of the compressed biscuits you gave me? I am afraid you will be hungry and drag me down. Now we are officially allies, and we will find the badge together. The training mission will be completed together. If he was a man, his words would be like a nail in a nail. Do you understand what I mean? Sawatika nodded vigorously. If I betray you, I will die a horrible death. It seemed that this oath was made a little too early. Just as Sawatika swore to live and die with Wan Guangxiao, someone else was attracted by the fire. This time, it was not as simple as one person, but a group. In this training center, only Americans could form groups. Wan Guangxiao knew this in his heart, and so did Sawatika. Adler finally appeared. Wan Guangxiao was a little surprised. He thought he would meet this guy in the central swamp. He didn't expect that the fire he started would attract so many people. In fact, there were people who were attracted by the fire one after another. When they arrived, they realized the existence of Adler and the others and left one after another. They were all very impressed. Hua Xia people were the best at starting a fire. They could even use stones to start a fire. At this moment, everyone's body was damp. Therefore, fire was the thing that everyone needed the most right now. Adler was no exception. He was also full of resentment because of his cold and wet clothes. Chapter 1346. I was wondering who it was. No wonder you're so powerful. You can even get fire. Adler was the one with the most right to speak. Before he opened his mouth, no one dared to speak. Everyone knew that their boss, Adler, was in a bad mood. Since they met, Wan Guangxiao had no intention of avoiding. He smiled and pointed at his temple. As long as you're willing to move this place, any problem can be solved. My clothes are already dry. It's especially warm to wear. Do you want to warm yourself up? Wan Guangxiao looked indifferent, but Sawadika wasn't as calm. He was truly afraid of AIDS group because he knew that his companions were killed by them. However, he didn't have any evidence, so he couldn't do anything to AIDS group. This pain made him very conflicted. He wanted to fight so much, but he was also afraid of failure. Adler was very surprised. Wan Guangxiao's first sentence to him was an invitation. It seemed that this Hua Xia was also very smart. He knew who he could not afford to offend. Since he took the initiative to invite him to warm himself up, of course he would accept. What he needed most now was fire. He could also get his subordinates to get some drier branches to make more fire. This way, his men wouldn't have to suffer from the cold. As expected of a friend from the state of etiquette. Ha ha ha, then I won't stand on ceremony. Adler said as he walked towards Wan Guangxiao's fire. Adler's people's morale instantly rose. There were a few people hiding in the dark who made disdainful remarks to Wan Guangxiao. However, these words were said from the bottom of their hearts. They did not dare to let the people near the fire hear them. Of course, if you want to warm yourself up, you have to pay a price. Wan Guangxiao suddenly put forward a condition. How about we make an exchange? In this place, no one had ever dared to raise conditions with Adler. Hearing Wan Guangxiao's words, Adler's first reaction was anger. Just as he was about to get angry, he suddenly saw Wan Guangxiao holding a bottle of water and raising it above the fire. Wan Guangxiao met his gaze and said, I said, my clothes are dry and I'm very warm. As long as I shake my hand, this fire will be extinguished. Think about what I said. Damn it! What a blatant threat this was. Adler's heart felt as if someone had ruthlessly punched it. This kind of humiliation was unbearable to him, and he was on the verge of exploding. But if the fire was extinguished, so what if he killed this damned fellow in front of him? None of his subordinates knew how to start a fire with stones. The heavy rain made all the vegetation in the swamp wet. He really didn't have the ability to survive. He needed this fire. Right now, what they needed the most was a fire. Silence. Dead silence. The entire swamp seemed to have stopped time. Even the wind had stopped moving forward. The silence in the air was terrifying. The only thing they could hear was their own thumping heartbeats. Fine. Tell me, what do you want? Adler finally opened his mouth again. He had chosen to compromise. For the sake of this fire, he was willing to make a sacrifice. He did not want to endure the feeling of being soaked, not even for a minute. In order to express his sincerity, Adler continued, as long as it is something I can do, I will give it to you in exchange. Tell me, what do you want? As long as you are willing to leave the fire to me, I will give you anything you want. Give me half of the food that you currently have, Wan Guangxiao said coolly. I believe you have already plundered many people's food, right? Leave half of it and save some food. It should be enough for you and your men to survive. Give me the rest. Half of the food. Has this fellow gone mad? Adler was on the verge of hysteria. You want so much food? Do you think you can finish it all? Wan Guangxiao, you had better not challenge my patience. Wan Guangxiao did not say anything else. He poured out a mouthful of water from the bottle. Sizzle. The intensity of the fire instantly decreased by half. Right now, you should be the one challenging my patience, right? Adler, you have plundered so much food. What you have plundered is not as simple as just food. What you have plundered is also the opportunity of those warriors. Do you understand? I want back what you have plundered. As long as you return half of it, I will give you and your men a chance. I will also give others a chance. Don't go overboard. The fire at night in the swamp was definitely a hope that could attract a large number of trainees. Thus, Wan Guangxiao was certain that other than Adler's men who had walked out into the open, there were many others who were hiding in the dark. A large number of these people were those who had their food plundered. Wan Guangxiao's words earlier were meant for those who did not dare to show their faces. He hoped that those people would stand up and help him face Adler and his men. Relying on his own strength, he could not possibly contend against Adler. Even if Adler were to give him the food now, once he obtained the fire, he would immediately order his men to snatch the food away. Unsure if it was Wan Guangxiao's imposing manner that had infected Sawadika, Sawadika suddenly stood up and glared fiercely at Adler. Return my food to me. You have no food because you have no choice. You have no right to deprive me of the right to choose my food. Seeing that the Thai man who was usually bullied and didn't dare to speak up was angry, ADHD almost flew into a rage and attacked Sawadika. However, Adler's peripheral vision caught sight of Wan Guangxiao raising the bottle again. If the water from the bottle were to be poured down, the fire would definitely be extinguished. Adler's face was completely gloomy. Using a voice that could kill, he said, "Take out all the food. Give them half." Hearing Adler's words, Wan Guangxiao let out a sigh of relief. He was also struggling with his thoughts. If he extinguished the fire, he wouldn't have any bargaining chips to trade with Adler. He also didn't know whether he should pour the water or not. Fortunately, Adler chose to compromise first. Otherwise, Wan Guangxiao really did not know what to do next. Seeing Wan Guangxiao's victory, a lot of people quickly stood up. All of them came out from the darkness, and all of them looked very angry. They chose to stand up at this time, obviously for the sake of food, but also because there was finally someone who could stand up for them. This was something that the training center had never seen before. Yes. Our food. Why should it be taken away by you? You did not choose the food and water, so you used the dagger you chose to hunt. The people who stood up were angry. It had always been the Americans who acted like tyrants. Today, it was finally their turn to admit defeat. That's right, for the fire, for the body heat, Adler chose to submit. However, Adler's heart was still angry. He would not let them get the food from his hands so easily. As long as he took back the fire, he would still choose to plunder the food. These people, in his eyes, would always be nothing more than prey. Humph, humph, humph. A group of trash actually wanted to act like a tyrant on his head. Absolutely unforgivable. But now, at this moment, he had to make a sacrifice. These food that he took out, he would definitely take it back. And the next time he took it back, he would not let these people off so easily. He wanted to bury them all here. Wan Guangxiao got the food and gave the right to use the fire to Adler. After Adler got the fire, he sneered at Wan Guangxiao and said, "You will regret it. Today's matter, and the matter of Kento Ono, we will settle the score together. Although Kento Ono is a Japanese, I won't let him die in your hands. Do you understand? Kento Ono is dead." Wan Guangxiao was stunned. That guy made him chase for so long last night. What are you pretending for? Don't think that I don't know what you did. Adler finally said, "I won't touch you today, but don't let me see you tomorrow." Chapter 1347. Wan Guangxiao did not think that Kento Ono would actually die. He was quite surprised. That guy ran faster than a rabbit. He could not even catch up to him. He actually died just like that. Afterwards, he found out that Kento Ono died at Adler's hands. It was during that night's chase that the panicked Kento Ono ended up stepping into a terrifying muddy swamp pit. The swamp pit wasn't scary. As long as one was careful and held their breath, they could still ensure that they wouldn't get sucked in. Retribution was that perhaps Kento Ono had done too much evil, so his luck was really too bad. The escape route he chose led him into the center of the wetland. The periphery of the swamp was a rather dangerous place, known as the Crocodile Pit. Only a few people who went to that kind of place alone could return alive. Speaking of which, Kento Ono was really lucky. He actually managed to escape from that place where there were dozens of crocodiles. Unfortunately, although he managed to escape, the crocodile had bitten off his entire left arm, and even his right calf. His entire muscle was ripped off, and he ran back to the base where Adler and the rest were staying. When Adler and the rest saw this badly mutilated guy, they were instantly stunned. They had to admit that this guy's vitality was really too tenacious. Unfortunately, the master he chose was Adler, a guy who only cared about his own interests. After Adler heard Kento Ono's account, he immediately made the decision to kill this badly mutilated guy. Because he escaped from the crocodile pit, the whole way was covered in blood. There was no guarantee that the smell of his blood would not attract the crocodiles, or even more terrifying creatures. For the sake of the big picture, Adler did not soften his heart towards this normally obedient little lackey. He did not hesitate at all when he killed him. Before Kento Ono could understand why his master abandoned him, he had already stopped breathing. His body was left in the same place, while Adler and the rest quickly moved away. No one wanted to stay here and wait for a group of horrifying swamp crocodiles to crawl towards them. Everyone had a mentality of fear, even people like them. In order to survive, they could not help anyone. Kento Ono should be able to understand Adler and the rest. Because if it was him, seeing such a badly mutilated person, how could he help? Yes. Under such circumstances, under such conditions, so what if he saved her? It was impossible for them to survive. This was because none of the 900 players had chosen the flare gun. All of them only had one way to go, and that was to enter the central swamp, get the badge, and then leave this damned place. Along the way, unless they died, they could only chase after this goal and walk all the way to the end. Adler would not blame himself for Kento Ono's death. He would push all the blame onto Wan Guangxiao. Kento Ono had become like this because of Wan Guangxiao. If it wasn't for Wan Guangxiao, Kento Ono wouldn't have gone the wrong way and entered the crocodile pit. Adele will be here soon? This thought was instilled into the consciousness of all his subordinates. Wan Guangxiao had become the demon that every one of them feared almost overnight. Adler was very clear that as long as there was a chance, he could use the fear of others to quickly kill Wan Guangxiao. With Kento Ono dead, no one would dare to provoke Wan Guangxiao alone. Adler had to use the power of many people. He couldn't do it himself because he was very clear. Wan Guangxiao's ability was too strong. He would definitely be noticed by the higher-ups. Although he could do many things on a normal day, and the higher-ups would turn a blind eye to it, but if he did anything to Wan Guangxiao, they would not allow it. That was why he thought of letting Kento Ono do it. Since Kento Ono was dead, he could only use everyone. What if everyone did it? He was very clear about the simple principle of the law not punishing the masses. Only by using this method could he make Wan Guangxiao fall beyond redemption. Adler was very clear about this point. He believed in his own judgment. This was also the reason why Adler could become General Adler today. His judgment was very sharp. He knew how to handle a matter to make the ending of the matter perfect. Adler didn't do anything to Wan Guangxiao. Even if Wan Guangxiao used the bonfire to exchange for half of his food, he still endured it. At this moment, there were too many eyes staring at him. Once he made a move, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Secondly, he couldn't guarantee that those who had been opposing him would help him. He couldn't guarantee that those who were opposing him would help him. Adler's thoughts were meticulous, and Wan Guangxiao was also a man with both rough and meticulous thoughts. He had also analyzed the reason why Adler didn't make a move despite being forced to this point. He felt that the biggest possibility was that Adler was afraid that those who had been robbed by him would be angered at this time and step forward bravely. Adler's biggest enemy wasn't Wan Guangxiao's strength alone, but Wan Guangxiao's ability to lead the other international special forces soldiers. Wan Guangxiao was very clear that now was the best time for him to buy people's hearts. He had obtained so much food that he couldn't finish it all by himself. If he monopolized it, of course, no one would come to rob him. However, he would quickly lose people's hearts. At least, no one would trust him anymore. Instead, they would treat him as someone like Adler. Wan Guangxiao wasn't that selfish. Brothers who are hungry, come out. Everyone can share the things I have here. Wan Guangxiao gathered those who had been robbed. These people appeared more and more. In front of more than 100 people in Adler's group, Wan Guangxiao gathered more than 200 people from a place not far from them. People from all the continents in Asia, Europe, and Africa gathered towards Wan Guangxiao. One must know that if the food was distributed to these people, it would only be enough to satisfy their hunger. So, if only a third of the people were given, then this third of the people would be able to last with Wan Guangxiao until the end. Faced with this choice, Wan Guangxiao didn't hesitate to divide the food equally. Those who dared to come out at this time and gather near Adler's group were definitely so hungry that they couldn't take it anymore. Those who still had some food and could hold on were still hiding in the dark. They were afraid that they would offend Adler and also afraid that they would lose the food they had. Sometimes, sex was so selfish. Since these people chose to come here because they had nowhere else to go, Wan Guangxiao naturally wouldn't keep the food. Because everyone here had the right to live. Although they weren't from the same country and weren't united, they were still people from the same training center. Seeing Wan Guangxiao distribute the food so generously, as Wan Guangxiao's first little brother, of course, he felt that it was necessary to stand up and remind him. Brother, what we are doing, isn't it too wasteful? These people are likely to leave after eating. They are just here to scrounge for food. What Sawadika said was right. He didn't avoid anyone present. It was obvious that he was a straightforward person. Wan Guangxiao smiled slightly. Although it wasn't very loud, it was enough for everyone to hear. He said to the people around him, "If you leave after eating, I don't care. But if you are willing to stay, then tomorrow, we will think of a way to solve the food problem together. I think if 3 to 5 people work together, it shouldn't be difficult to catch some animals that can be eaten, right? If all of us stick together, even if we want to eat a crocodile, it should be a small matter, right? It's up to you whether you want to leave or stay." Chapter 1348. The reason behind Wan Guangxiao's words was very simple, and everyone was very clear about this problem. It was already the second day since they entered here. Although no one had counted how many people had died, it wasn't difficult for them to imagine the situation of others based on their own current situation. If everyone didn't unite, perhaps it would be impossible to enjoy tomorrow's sun, right? Today, everyone present, one after another, had eaten the food that belonged to Adler a few minutes ago. Would Adler bear a grudge? Of course not. He would never let go of anyone who had eaten the food that belonged to him. These people were aware of this point the moment they stuffed the compressed biscuits into their mouths. However, the hunger at that moment made them unable to stop. Many people had not eaten for 2 days. That feeling of emptiness was so strong. In such a huge swamp full of danger, if they couldn't even replenish their physical strength, then death was completely in front of them. If they wanted to survive, if they wanted to avoid Adler's harassment, if they wanted to finally get the badge, complete the survival training, and continue to stay in this training center to learn real special warfare management experience. If they couldn't survive to the last moment, then their previous tolerance and persistence would become worthless. Because the training center didn't open at the same time, but people sent by the country at any time, as long as they passed the basic assessment, they would be thrown into the training center for devil training. Therefore, some people had been here for a year and only encountered this swamp survival training, while some people had only been here for 10 days and encountered this damn training program. These newcomers had never encountered such cruel survival training, and often found it difficult to persist. But once they persevered, they would quickly mature and become the best in the training center. Wan Guangxiao had only been here for a month, and he was also a newcomer. He was able to do so many amazing things in such a short period of time, sending away so many bullies in the training center, and had long been looked at in a new light by everyone. And today, under such harsh living conditions, he was not afraid of power and stood up to contend with Adler, instead of wallowing in the mire with him. Under such harsh living conditions, he was still able to share food with everyone, organize everyone together, and not give up anyone who begged him for survival. If this kind of person said that he wanted to unite everyone, he would definitely be able to do it. Everyone believed that Wan Guangxiao had the ability, the strength, and the courage to unite everyone, lead everyone to get the badge, and lead everyone to fight against the bullying and oppression of Ada's gang. After all, everyone knew in their hearts that even if they got the badge, it might not necessarily be a successful end. Only ghosts knew if Adler's group would come to snatch the badge they found. These were all very likely to happen, so everyone knew that sticking together was the only way for them to survive and complete the mission. There was only one person in the International Special Forces Training Center who had the ability to unite these international soldiers who had been ostracized by the American soldiers, and that was Wan Guangxiao. Now that Wan Guangxiao had stood up, everyone fell into hesitation. It was still fear that was causing trouble. They were all too clear about the strength of Adler's group. That group's strength was too terrifying, so much so that they didn't even dare to imagine how they could contend against Adler's group. If you don't even have that much guts, then what's the point of coming here? Ha 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 ha. Wan Guangxiao suddenly laughed a few times and said lightly, "With this level of skill, it's better for you to leave early. It's better for you to leave early. Although there's no signal gun, if everyone leaves together, I believe that someone will arrange it." These words definitely deeply stimulated the heart of everyone present. No one wanted to be a coward. If they returned to their country dejectedly, wouldn't they become a joke? They couldn't go back even if they died. What it meant to go back, everyone was well aware of it. If you think you still have some guts, if you're a man, then stay. Wan Guangxiao still used his understated tone to say, "I only make friends with real men." The last sentence finally completely angered these iron-blooded men present. Yes, they had really unknowingly lost their guts. Coming here, in order to stay, in order to give their country an explanation, they would rather swallow their anger and not provoke Ada's group. They weren't men without guts, but their tempers had been erased for some purpose. Finally, after they couldn't bear it any longer, everyone exploded. Wan Guangxiao could see that once a person's guts were aroused, the gaze in their eyes would be completely different from others. Of course, there were also people who had completely lost their most fundamental motivation. After eating the hardtack given by Wan Guangxiao, a portion of them chose to leave silently. These people had seen too many people forced into a corner by Ada's group, so even with Wan Guangxiao leading them, they didn't have confidence. Once self-confidence was dispelled, it could almost be said that it would never be raised again. It was the same for everyone. So, no matter what you do, the first thing you have to ensure is your self-confidence. Only with self-confidence can there be a possibility of success. Those who left, Wan Guangxiao would never ask them to stay, because these people were already crippled. In their consciousness, they were no longer strong enough to be a man, but only needed to be a person who didn't lose face for the country. It didn't mean that they had no guts. But their guts were all for the people who could see them. At least, the humiliation and grievances they suffered here couldn't be seen by the people of the country. They were also great warriors. Not far away, Da's mood was very bad at this moment. Although the fire made his body dry a lot, Wan Guangxiao's call not far away made him feel more threatened. What made him feel even more uncomfortable was that there were a lot of people who stayed by Wan Guangxiao's side. There was no need to count. At a glance, there were about 170 or 80 people who stayed in Wan Guangxiao's camp. This wasn't a small number. Even his Meizhou gang didn't have so many people. Now, Wan Guangxiao had obviously become a thorn in Da's side. He had to pull him out no matter what. He definitely wouldn't give him any chance to breathe. This training center gathered elites from all over the world. When these people returned to their countries in the future, They would be the trump card of their country's military power, the most powerful secret weapon. De was very clear about this. Because of this, he couldn't allow Wan Guangxiao to walk out of this swamp alive. Even if this International Special Forces Training Center belonged to the United Nations, he decided to take a risk under the eyes of the leaders of the United Nations. Even if he was found out, he had to do it. This was also for the future of the United States to prevent a strong enemy like Hua Xia from having a trump card like Wan Guangxiao in the hands of Wan Guangxiao. It had to be said that De was definitely a rare talent for the United States. He was also an absolutely loyal professional. Everything that was for the benefit of the country was right in his eyes. It didn't matter if it was despicable when it was done. This night, everyone was safe and sound. De's people didn't cause trouble. Wan Guangxiao's team also realized that as long as the team was strong, De's people wouldn't dare to make a move easily. This also greatly increased their confidence. In the next 2 days, no one had anything to eat in their hands. Even De's team had no food. Even if they wanted to plunder, there was no one left to plunder. They could only rely on hunting the prey here, some unknown animals. Of course, they ate the most crocodile meat. Because they had already passed the crocodile pit and entered the central swamp. This place was lacking in everything, but the swamp crocodile was the most abundant. This kind of crocodile that liked to lurk in the swamp was quietly waiting for prey to be delivered to its mouth every day. The people who participated in this survival training also relied on crocodile meat every day to replenish their physical strength. The people and the crocodiles spent 2 days fighting each other. 2 days later, Wan Guangxiao saw the so-called central swamp. It was a swamp that couldn't be stood on at a glance. And those badges were inside. The bubbles that came out from time to time told Wan Guangxiao that the crocodiles inside were probably bigger and more terrifying. At this time, De, who had been lurking behind Wan Guangxiao, finally couldn't help but want to make a move. Chapter 1349. It had been 4 days and 4 nights since they entered the central swamp of the Pantanal wetlands. In these 4 days and 4 nights, nearly 1,000 trained special forces had suffered heavy casualties. Less than 600 people had made it to the central swamp. Although some of those who did not make it to the central swamp could not be confirmed dead, at least they had no chance. It was impossible for them to overcome this terrifying swamp with their scattered combat forces. Of the less than 600 people, Wan Guangxiao's team made up nearly a third of them. He displayed his combat leadership skills to the fullest. None of the people who stayed with him that night died. Sometimes, some scattered people joined in. After 4 days, Wan Guangxiao's team had reached 200 people. Only about 70 people were injured, and about 30 of them were only slightly injured. Then there was Adler's team. Adler's combat leadership skills were definitely a rare genius. Although his team had a few dozen fewer people than Wan Guangxiao's team, other than Kento Ono's accidental death, no one had died. The number of injured people was also less than 40. These 2 teams made up most of the people. In addition to them, there was a team from the European Union. Although there were less than 100 people, their cooperation was very good. Although 4 people had died, most of them were intact. The injury rate was very low. Then there was the Russian team of 30 people. Perhaps their ethnic blood was strong enough. Although they were small in number, they never bowed their heads in front of the Americans. Moreover, their combat power was also quite strong. Not one of the 30 people was seriously injured or killed. Of course, this also had to do with the small number of people. The smaller the number, the more cautious they were. Therefore, their survival rate was higher. After all, they were not ordinary people. These 4 teams made up the majority of the people. The remaining people were scattered. There were small teams of a dozen people, and there were also a few groups. They could not even be called a team. Those who were able to reach this stage all proved that their ability to survive was far beyond that of mortals. Only such a person could be considered a special soldier. When these people finally saw the so-called central swamp, they were still amazed. The central swamp was hundreds of hectares. It could be described as an endless expanse of land. Apart from the scattered tree branches that poked out of the swamp, all they could see was the muddy swamp and the huge bubbles that popped up from time to time. Occasionally, they could see squirming in the muddy swamp. There were only crocodiles wriggling. Looking for badges in such a swamp? It sounded like a joke to the extreme. Maybe all the badges were in the crocodiles' stomachs. Moreover, there were very few thick trees in the swamp that could escape the crocodiles' attacks. Stepping into the swamp was no different from stepping into the gates of hell, right? Damn it! Who the hell designed this training program? They're basically sending us to our deaths. We're not playing. What kind of bullshit survival training is this? Is there still a chance to survive? Someone had already roared and complained. Indeed, this was not something that ordinary people could endure. Wan Guangxiao believed that these people who could persist until today were certainly not simple people. Their survival ability, individual combat ability, and team cooperation ability had all been verified. However, they found that there were almost impossible things for them to do. This was probably something that no one could accept. Everyone present would be shaken at this moment. There was no doubt about it. Even Wan Guangxiao was the same. He was also thinking about whether to gamble with his life in this survival training that was basically no different from suicide. At this moment, a helicopter slowly flew over from a distance. A huge loudspeaker came from the sky and shouted, "Are you all scared? This is just the beginning of the swamp training. The previous 4 days were just a warm-up. Is it so easy to become a special force? 4 days to get here. Do you still have the face to panic, complain, and say no? Those who can't accept it, get lost immediately. You don't deserve to be the hero of your country, and you don't deserve to be the pride of your country." These words were like a sharp knife that stabbed deeply into the hearts of everyone present. Do you think this place is very scary? What is this? The Pantanal Swamp is nothing in this world. Indonesia's Java Valley Cave is known as the Devil's Mouth. It has 6 trumpet-shaped cave entrances. Needless to say, those who enter by mistake are in danger. Even those who keep their distance will not be spared. When people or animals pass by the cave entrance, they will be pulled in by a powerful force and eaten. Even if they are 6 or 7 meters away from the cave entrance, they will be sucked in by the Devil's Mouth. There are already piles of bones inside, and it is difficult to distinguish which are human and which are animal bones. Those who are better than you can still be found by those who are truly special forces. If they have the courage to go in, they will also have the ability to come out alive. In the unavoidable Kamchatka Peninsula, in this 2-kilometer-long Death Valley, the terrain is rugged, the rocks are jagged, bears, wolverines, wild boars are all dead, and the white bones are everywhere. It is a desolate sight. The valley is filled with harmful gases. But there are also real special forces that have gone in to check it out. That is why they brought us the news of poisonous gases. In the Death Valley that connects California and Nevada, on both sides of the valley, there are cliffs and precipices. Danger is everywhere. Those who see it shudder, and those who hear it change their expressions. Many exploration teams have never returned, and were completely wiped out. Similarly, they were also conquered by special forces. There is also Hua Xia's Forbidden Zone, northern Tibet's no man's land. Other than the mountains, lakes, grasslands and wild animals, it is almost completely barren. That place is indeed beautiful, and there is no air pollution. The air is very transparent, and everything looks very clear. But why is it a no man's land? The oxygen content in the air is very low, and the climate changes constantly. The lakes are all saline and alkali water. What looks like a beautiful place is actually full of danger. But there are still special forces that can survive in that place for a month or even longer. Do you know why? Because you are the most special soldiers in this world. You are not ordinary people. Not ordinary soldiers. The test of death that you have to undergo is far more difficult than other ordinary soldiers. If your mission is something that can be easily completed, then what qualifications do you have to call yourselves special forces? Do you know why special forces are special? The uniqueness of the Special Forces lies in the fact that they are able to complete missions that are impossible for ordinary soldiers. Those badges that represent your honor, the badges that represent your Special Forces, the badges that represent your difference from ordinary soldiers, the badges that represent your country's belief that your choice is not wrong, are all within this swamp. If you can prove to me that you can find it, then you will be a real Special Forces combat unit. If you cannot, then you are a bunch of trash. The lecture on the helicopter lasted for more than an hour, and all of the lectures were targeted at him. Every sentence deeply stimulated everyone present. They had already persevered until now. Were they going to give up? Of course not. Absolutely not. If they gave up today, then it was the same as giving up everything. Even if those badges are in the stomach of this giant swamp crocodile, we will still cut open the stomach of this crocodile and retrieve the badges. Retrieve our honor. Wan Guangxiao was the first to shout out the anger in his heart. Chapter 1350. Adler, they look like they have a lot of fighting spirit. What should we do next? The one who spoke was Adler's right-hand man. His name was Neville and he came from Texas. He seemed to be born with a fighting spirit. As long as there was a chance to fight, he would not let it go easily. In the past few days, they had been keeping a distance from Wan Guangxiao's team because Adler's mind was focused on how to deal with the harsh conditions here. They had to find food and avoid danger. They had no time to find trouble with Wan Guangxiao. Now, they had arrived at the central swamp. If they did not act now, it would be too late and there would be no more opportunities. Opportunities were reserved for those who were prepared. They had been preparing for so long. They should be able to solve this problem now, right? Since they have the fighting spirit, let them fight for it first, Adler said calmly. In this kind of place, you can't survive with just a little fighting spirit. None of us know what is in this damn place. After all, no one can prove whether the legend of the swamp crocodile is true or not. What if it is true? What do we have to fight against such a legendary creature? Then what do you mean? Neville frowned. Let them explore for us first? Of course, we know nothing about this damn place. If we want to explore the secrets inside, there must be sacrifices, Adler said. I don't have the guts like that Hua Xia guy. He dares to rush up when he wants to. Indonesia's Java Cave, Kamchatka Peninsula, California's Death Valley, northern Tibet's no man's land. Those places mentioned in the plane just now might be explored with the lives of trainees like us. Today, we will use our lives to uncover the secrets of this great swamp. If you want to gain something, there must be sacrifices. The people above are very clear about this simple truth. Neville had to admit that he did not follow the wrong person in the training center. Adler considered everything so thoroughly and carefully. Not only did he consider the thoughts of the people below, but he also had insight into the thoughts of the people above. With such a person leading them, they could become unshakable kings in this damn training center. The reason why Nivi wanted to get rid of Wan Guangxiao was because Wan Guangxiao was starting to shake their position as the king. This person's rallying power was too strong. He was able to gather so many people together in such a short time. It would be better for them to deal with this as soon as possible. Neve, if this person can be taken care of without us doing anything, that would be the best. Ade said faintly, we can make use of the European Union and dozens of Russians. Originally, I wanted to do it myself, but since there are such unique conditions here, let me think of other ways. Adler's insidiousness lay in this. He could change his plans at any time. He would definitely not hang on to a decision. His ability to adapt to changing circumstances was probably something that not many people could compare to. Before the helicopter came, he did not have this idea. As the helicopter ignited the fire in Wan Guangxiao's heart, he immediately changed his strategy. He could use everyone's mentality to solve the problem. In addition to Wan Guangxiao's group who were burning with anger, the Russian team of 30 people was also burning with anger. They were confident that they could solve this problem with their strength. Wasn't it just a few crocodiles in the swamp? It was nothing to a brave and good at fighting like them. What Adler wanted to take advantage of was this point. Since they both thought that they could solve the problem with the burning flame in their hearts, then let their two flames burn each other. Very soon, Adler had an idea in his mind. In fact, if he wanted to make them fight, it was very simple. He only needed to use a little trick. After a whole day of exploration, no one dared to enter the central swamp. No matter how passionate they were, everyone was very clear about the consequences of provoking this natural swamp. Wan Guangxiao also ordered everyone not to act rashly. If they wanted to solve the danger of the swamp, it was impossible to do it with manpower alone. They needed to make tools that could allow them to stand on the swamp. In the evening, the entire swamp had become a place for crafting large wooden rafts. Although the only tool they had was a dagger, they could still break down the trees bit by bit. Then, they would weave the flexible vegetation into strong vines and use them to tie the branches of the trees together to create a wooden raft that could carry people across the swamp. This idea was first proposed by Wan Guangxiao, so when they started making the first prototype of the raft, the other teams began to realize that this was indeed a good way to solve the problem of standing in the muddy swamp. Then, in the evening, everyone started to follow suit. Even Ade and the others couldn't help but admit that Wan Guangxiao's idea was too good. They also ordered their men to start making rafts. At this moment, Adler was still thinking about something else. He realized that the Russians had used the shortest amount of time to gather the sturdiest rattan plants in the surroundings. Undoubtedly, they were smart. Moreover, a few of the Russians had carefully hidden the vines they weaved in a place and arranged for a person to watch over the vines. Everyone was busy until the sky was completely dark, and not a single shadow could be seen. Only then did they stop. They were racing against time, because the longer they waited, the hungrier they became. After entering the central swamp, it was very difficult for them to catch anything that could be used as food. Moreover, the crocodiles hiding in the central swamp were very patient. They didn't give the humans any chance to attack. Hunger, weariness, and intense sleepiness invaded everyone. When the sky was completely dark and everyone couldn't see and couldn't continue working, everyone started to use wooden rafts to encircle the vines. Then, they took turns to watch over the vines. The others quickly fell asleep. This night was the most tiring day for everyone since they came to the swamp. Although they took turns to watch over the vines, the people on duty were always so tired that they couldn't open their eyes. At this point, most people didn't think that there would be any danger from their own people. At least, they didn't have anything that Ade and the others wanted. Ade and the others were also making rafts, so they wouldn't take the risk to fight for it at the last moment. Even so, early the next morning, a problem still occurred. One of the Russian team of 30 went missing. Along with that person, their strongest vines were also missing. This matter was a huge blow to these guys. They immediately pointed the spearhead at Ade and the others. Because in this place, perhaps only Ade and the others could do such a thing. These damned bastards. They actually dared to touch their people. Several different kinds of so-and-so skis rushed into Adler's camp. Ade didn't show any hostility in the face of the Russian team's attack. He actually patiently communicated with them. In the end, he even let these Russians carefully inspect their rafts. Finally, these Russians didn't find the vines they made on Ade's rafts. They were very confused. Could it be that they made a mistake in their judgment? I've always had a good impression of you Russian brothers. Ade smiled faintly. Here, I might as well tell you something. Think about it. For us to reach this point, whose team is the biggest? If you don't have a scheming person, can you reach this point? Several so-and-sos suddenly realized. So it was that Huaxia person. They didn't expect him to do such a thing behind their backs. He was simply sanctimonious. The anger of the Russian team was instantly ignited. They didn't care about the vines. They only cared about their missing comrade. Chapter 1351. Companions were very important to any team. It was also a bottom line that most people could not tolerate. If they only lost the vines, they might choose to tolerate it. However, if they lost their companions' lives, they would not forgive them so easily. Just as the Russians were about to take out their knives and kill Wan Guangxiao's team, Adler stopped them. The leader of these dozens of Russians was called Drokoski. His combat power was definitely the best in the training center. However, one could rarely hear his voice. It could be said that he was the embodiment of the International Special Forces Training Center's low-key. Perhaps he was not the highest in the various training tests and could only be regarded as average. However, Adler could see that Drokoski was deliberately hiding his strength. With his strength, he could easily be ranked in the top 10 in the training center. There was a very important reason why he chose to keep a low profile. It was because he did not want to be targeted. Adler could see what this guy was thinking, so he was very clear about the current situation. As long as he could force Drokoski's combat power out, he could completely use him to deal with Wan Guangxiao. Adler really wanted to see what kind of sparks could be created if these two guys fought with real swords and spears. Drokoski, I can understand how you feel now. One of my men also died in the hands of Wan Guangxiao. This Hua Xia person is really arrogant. Adler said, but I have to admit that his appeal is strong. You should also admit his ability. Although we can't verify his character, his ability is obvious to all. What do you mean? Drokoski's gaze was somewhat cold. You want to cooperate with me? I'm sorry, Adler. Although your team is indeed very strong and you have enough people under you, I'm afraid my people won't get along with your people. There is no possibility of us cooperating. I will find a way to solve our own problems. You don't have to worry about it. Adler snorted, using an old Chinese proverb. This is called a dog biting Lu Dong Bin and not recognizing the good intentions of others. Of course, I know that your people are not on good terms with my people. I don't want to participate in this matter. I have no obligation to help you. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I've also suffered at the hands of Wan Guangxiao. When we have a common enemy, even if we can't be considered friends, we should be considered allies, right? I said so much just to remind you not to underestimate your opponent. Drokoski narrowed his eyes. He was very clear that Adler would not do anything that did not benefit him. What is your purpose? Why do you want to help me? What good will it do you? That's right, if I were to clash with him, it would definitely be a lose-lose situation. You could just sit back and reap the benefits. Drokoski, if that's the case, do you think I need to tell you so much? Adler said disdainfully, what I'm doing now, isn't it to stop you from doing something that will hurt both of us? What do you think I want? I just want you to win. That's why I'm telling you this. If you don't think it's necessary, then I don't need to talk nonsense with you. You're the one who was impulsive. I'm the one who advised you. I didn't bewitch you into doing something impulsive. Think about it carefully. It was indeed so. Drokoski thought about this question carefully. Indeed, as Adler said, the one who was reckless and impulsive was him, not Adler. If Adler had not stopped him, he would have led his brothers to fight with Wan Guangxiao's people. Of course, Drokoski was also very clear that what Adler wanted to do was definitely beneficial to him. If it did not benefit him, he would definitely not stand out to help him. What can you do for me? Of course I won't help you at all. I just want to tell you that if you bring your people to provoke Wan Guangxiao now, there will only be one result. Adler said, he has the ability to call on his people to stand up and fight against you. At that time, if you want to escape, I'm afraid it won't be so easy. I don't deny the fighting ability of you and your brothers, but you have to think clearly. People who can survive until now are definitely not simple. They all have a certain level of strength. Seeing that Drokoski's face had begun to change, Adler knew that his words definitely made Drokoski realize the threat of Wan Guangxiao, and this kind of threat must be eliminated. Adler continued to promote Wan Guangxiao's threat theory. I can guarantee that if your dozens of brothers provoke Wan Guangxiao, they will definitely be wiped out by his nearly 200 people. I'm definitely not looking down on you, but it's almost 8 against 1 battle. You can't win. Yes, you're right. 8 against 1. It's impossible for us to win. We don't even have the chance to lose. Drokoski's face showed a bitter smile. It turned out that the Americans were not the only powerful people in this world. As long as they had strength, they could stand arrogantly in front of him. Even this Hua Xia dared to take his things and kill his brothers. Damn it! Drokiski was a little regretful. If he had roped in more people when he first arrived at the training center, he would not have fallen to this point now. He was confident that as long as they banded together, even if there were only 30 of them, no one would dare to provoke them. After all, even Adler's American faction did not dare to touch them. Who would dare to touch him? He had never expected that in the end, it would not be the Americans or the European Union that would step on his head. Instead, it would be a group of people from all walks of life led by this Hua Xia man. This Hua Xia actually relied on these people to be so arrogant and not put them in his eyes. Damn it! The anger in Drokiski's heart could not be swallowed. Although he did not like Adler, for now, he really needed Adler's help. Adler had already told him very clearly that they would not do anything. Drokiski believed this because Adler really had no reason to sacrifice for them. What can you help me with? Drokiski finally let go of his inner insistence. He wanted to hear what the American had to say to solve their current emergency. In a head-on confrontation, the loser will definitely be you. But if you avoid the sharp edge, maybe you still have a chance. He knew very well that Drokiski's vengeful mentality was too serious. As long as he grasped his vengeful mentality, he would be able to use him. At that time, not only would he be able to get rid of Wan Guangxiao, he would also be able to fall on Drokiski's head, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Drokiski knew that Adler must have his dirty tricks. Perhaps this dirty trick was originally used by him to deal with them, but now he gave it to him to deal with Wan Guangxiao. It was conceivable that Adler really could not tolerate Wan Guangxiao. Drokiski also heard about where Adler's hatred for Wan Guangxiao came from. It was said that this Hua Xia could actually make a fire on a wet rainy night and use the fire in exchange for half of Adler's group's food. Adler also used this half of the food to establish his prestige in front of those people. Now, Wan Guangxiao could stand tall in front of so many people. It was definitely not just a matter of his personal ability. A considerable part of the reason was that these people were indebted to him. They all ate the life-saving food he gave them that day. Since Adler had a reason to hate Wan Guangxiao, Drokiski did not need to worry about Adler playing tricks on him. So, there should be no mistake in believing in him now. What kind of plan do you have? Drokiski was completely controlled by Aide's, Wan Guangxiao's threat theory. He completely pointed the spearhead at Wan Guangxiao. Chapter 1352. Drokiski, you are a smart man. There is no need for me to say anything. You should be able to see the current situation, Aude said coolly. This swamp is not something that can be easily conquered. Just now, the people in the helicopter had said so much. I can understand that they are just adding fuel to the fire. Naturally, there will be people who will pay with their lives for the sake of their hot-bloodedness. And in Wan Guangxiao's team, there is no lack of such people. Drokiski was stunned. You mean to say, let them go to their deaths? Is there any difference between that and not saying anything? Is that your idea? You think Wan Guangxiao would be so stupid as to rush to his death? He has so many people under him. So many of them are willing to die for him. You want him to wait for his death? How is that possible? Aude said with a disdainful smile. If you don't do anything, nothing will happen to Wan Guangxiao. He will take the lead and lead his men into the swamp. You only need to take action then. Is there any difference between taking action then and taking action now? We are both facing the same opponent. Although he will not be able to use his full strength in the swamp due to his caution, the same goes for us. We will also be facing the same problem. The result will still be fair. Aude shook his head. That is not necessarily true. If you fellows do not take action against his men, you might be able to catch him off guard. There is no need for you fellows to deal with him. The things in the swamp are enough for them. What you need to do is to make sure that your wooden rafts are good enough. Have I made myself clear enough? Drokiski instantly understood what Aude meant. He did not want him to attack Wan Guangxiao's men. Rather, he wanted him to attack their wooden rafts. As long as they enter the swamp, they would not be able to survive without wooden rafts. Why did he not think of such a simple logic? It was not that Drokoski did not think of this. Rather, he was not as ruthless as Aude. This idea of his, other than the word sinister, Drokoski could not find another word to describe it. Although his brother's death was because of Wan Guangxiao's order, and his gang members were definitely involved, Drokoski didn't want to kill so many people at once. After all, destroying a wooden raft would implicate many innocent people. A great man must be ruthless. If you can't even handle such a small matter, you're destined to never achieve great things. Aude said, Wan Guangxiao is willing to sacrifice your people in order to achieve his goals, even if it's just for a few vines. You should be the one who knows how ruthless he is, right? He's not so kind as to give up on something he wants to do because he's afraid of implicating innocent people. At the same time, Wan Guangxiao was also lost in thought. He was a little lost. He personally supervised the last step of tying the wooden raft, so he knew what each joint looked like. In order to ensure the safety of the wooden raft, Wan Guangxiao's joints were flexible. These flexible joints could effectively prevent the sudden attack of the beasts in the swamp. Wan Guangxiao had seen the ferocity of the crocodiles, so he had no doubt that if the joints of the wooden raft had no space to move, it would be easily destroyed by the crocodiles. In order to ensure everyone's safety, Wan Guangxiao also let his subordinates pass on this point. Whether it was the Americans, the European alliance, the Russians, or the other small teams, they all received this news. Because the principle was simple, everyone used it. But now, Wan Guangxiao's flexible joints had suddenly become rigid joints. This made him more or less vigilant. After all, last night, it was the others who took turns to be on duty. Everyone hoped that he could have a good rest so that he could have the energy to lead everyone to conquer the swamp today. Wan Guangxiao looked at this joint and thought for a long time. He also realized that the vines used to tie this joint were not the ones they always used. He went forward and pinched it. He found that the vines were tougher. Based on this point of consideration, Wan Guangxiao eliminated the possibility of someone trying to sabotage them. He didn't say anything. He just silently tied the joint back into a flexible joint. At this moment, Drokoski suddenly brought his men to Wan Guangxiao's wooden raft. They just happened to see Wan Guangxiao tying the joint again. Wan Guangxiao, thank you for the advice you gave us. Drokoski suppressed the anger in his heart. If possible, I want to cooperate with you. I believe that you will be careful when exploring the swamp for the first time, and I will also be careful. Let's each take a few capable brothers and explore the swamp together. Wan Guangxiao glanced at Drokoski. This was the first time he had a face-to-face conversation with this Russian. This didn't seem to be his style. He always advocated relying on his own team to solve everything. I don't want to take all of us to take this risk. That's why I want to cooperate with you. Drokoski continued to explain, a wooden raft can only carry 15 people at most. To increase the probability of safe exploration, 2 wooden rafts must cooperate with each other. If that's the case, all of my people will have to enter the first exploration. Although we can believe in our own abilities, we can't really guarantee anything. I just don't want to put all of my people in danger for the first time. After a pause, Drokoski continued to look at Wan Guangxiao, who was looking at him seriously. I believe that you also don't want to put 30 of your people in danger. Each of us will take a wooden raft, 15 people. We will cooperate with each other for the first exploration of the swamp. Wan Guangxiao fell into silence. Of course, he knew that Drokoski's words were reasonable, but he didn't know why he was still a little suspicious. After all, he didn't have any friendship with Drokoski. Drokoski suddenly stood in front of him and said that he wanted to cooperate. This more or less made him a little uneasy. Why don't AIDS people or the European Union's people explore for the first time? Sawatika complained. We can wait for them to explore for the first time. This way we can reduce a lot of the risk. We don't need to take this risk. You think those Americans and Europeans will do this first? Drokoski sneered. I have something to say. Those people are waiting for you. Because they all know that Wan Guangxiao is a man with integrity. As long as they don't make a move, he will be the first to rush in with you. I had the same thought at first. But now, I don't think so. I want to cooperate because my people and I are not cowards who only know how to hide in the back. Drokoski was right. Wan Guangxiao didn't walk in front because he wanted to be the strongest. Instead, those people were like Drokoski said. They only knew how to hide in the back and wait until the danger was eliminated before they followed. It had been like this for the past few days. Wan Guangxiao also understood the situation. If he didn't lead people into the swamp, the others would stay in the swamp for 3 days, 5 days, or even a month. They might stay in this damn swamp forever. What would happen in the end was even more difficult to predict. After all, when people were forced into a corner, they would go berserk. If there was a shortage of food and they couldn't find anything to eat, the hundreds of people present would be in danger. So, at this time someone had to step forward. Wan Guangxiao didn't have any personal heroism, but he knew that his actions might affect the final outcome of hundreds of people. All right. I agree. Wan Guangxiao finally nodded. He agreed to Drokoski's request for cooperation. Chapter 1353. Boss, as long as it's something you decide on, I will support you unconditionally. But you have to tell me that your decision is not made rashly. Sawatika took a deep breath. As long as it's something that you can control, we will listen to you. Wan Guangxiao nodded. I won't make any rash decisions, and I won't let any of my brothers die casually. For the first exploration, I will personally lead the team and bring along our most capable brothers. Drokoski's heart twitched. You won't let any of your brothers die casually, but you can let his brothers die just because of some rattan. Humph, as long as you dare to enter the central swamp with me, I will definitely make sure you don't return. Wan Guangxiao, you have to be responsible for what you have done. You have to pay with your life. You have to publicize your ugly deeds to the world so that the whole world can see your face. You have to let the whole world know what kind of person you are. As long as boss says the word, I will be the first to go with you. Sawatika completely admired Wan Guangxiao. After a few days of contact, he realized that Wan Guangxiao's sincerity to everyone was definitely not for a certain purpose. He simply wanted everyone around him to live. They could all complete this survival training mission and continue to stay in the training center to learn the essence of the final stage. Moreover, Sawatika realized that staying by Wan Guangxiao's side, he had been learning all kinds of things that he did not understand before, especially the ability to command and control the overall situation. These things seemed to be innate. And Wan Guangxiao was born with this ability to rally people. His words were convincing. Since we have agreed, let's go together, Drokoski said. Drokoski said, I can listen to all your arrangements. As long as you can guarantee the safety of my brothers, I only have one condition. As for other things, you can do whatever you want. Okay. Wan Guangxiao nodded. Let's do it this way. Let's first be clear about the purpose of our first exploration. I hope you can emphasize to your people that I know you are all brave and good at fighting, but our purpose is only to explore and determine where the danger line is, where the swamp is, where the crocodiles will appear, and whether the crocodiles are more powerful than the ones we encountered before. As long as we get these things, we will leave immediately. We must ensure everyone's safety. Drokoski nodded and said, Okay, I understand. I will pass on the message to everyone under my command. We will definitely control their behavior. Then, our raft will be in the front, and your raft will be in the back. Wan Guangxiao said, I can say that the reason for my arrangement is that you will be safer than us. In fact, that is indeed the case. But, at the same time, it does not guarantee your safety. It is not impossible for us to miss the crocodiles lurking in the swamp. Once a crocodile falls behind us, you will be responsible for killing it. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to evacuate easily. It sounded like the front was safe again. After all, if the people in front found danger, they could stop in time, and the people behind had to be ready to deal with a sneak attack at any time. Fortunately, crocodiles did not have the intelligence to think of deliberately going behind to sneak attack, so although the people at the back faced a huge risk, the probability was small. Although the people in front had the opportunity to predict danger in advance, the probability of facing danger was high. Therefore, no matter who was in the front and who was in the back, it was the same. There was no fairness or unfairness. Drokoski also knew this probability. He nodded, indicating that he agreed with Wan Quangxiao's arrangement. Since that was the case, then let's start. When do we set off? Let's go now, Wan Quangxiao said without hesitation. Time waits for no one. The sooner we solve the problem and get the badge, the sooner we can leave this damn place. I don't really want to stay here for a month. I'm afraid we will become barbarians by then. Wan Quangxiao quickly selected a dozen people with quick reactions and ability to get on the wooden raft with him. Drokoski also quickly brought people over. The two wooden rafts were pushed into the swamp, one in front and one at the back. Everyone held a thick wooden stick in their hands to support the raft forward. The other hand was holding a dagger, ready to deal with any sudden danger. They have entered the central swamp. Neville had been very dissatisfied with this, but this was Adler's decision, so he still chose to support it unconditionally. In fact, in his heart, he had always wanted to fight with Wan Quangxiao, because he heard about Wan Quangxiao's personal ability, so he was particularly interested in this guy with super strong personal ability. Now, this guy was going to be killed by Drokoski in the swamp. He did not even have the chance to fight. Wasn't this his biggest regret in the training center? If this decision was not made by Adler, if it was not Adler's judgment, he would definitely not support it. He would support all of Adler's decisions, just like how Sawatika trusted Wan Quangxiao now. Trust was slowly cultivated. No one would believe or trust someone from the start, because the person they trusted would bring them the results they wanted, and did not disappoint them every time. That was why they would continue to trust and choose to believe. Trust was definitely not something that could be won with just a few words. Instead, it had to be proven through actual actions. This was why a leader was a leader. Neville, I know you don't like me doing this. Adler smiled. But you should understand that it is safer to let others come in contact with such a dangerous person than to do it ourselves. Everything is for the sake of achieving the goal, and achieving the goal is enough. Any means will do. This is what I have told you many times. I know, Neville said. There is an idiom in Hua Xia, by hook or by crook. It means that in order to achieve the goal, any means will be used. You have indeed taught us many times. Adler nodded with satisfaction. That's right. Since this saying came from Hua Xia, it means that Wan Quangxiao is also a person who will do anything to achieve his goal. We can only use this method to deal with him. Neville suddenly said, what if Drokoski and the others fail this time? Do we need to do it ourselves? If Drokoski fails, then in this place, we must never argue with Wan Quangxiao again. Adler said, I really don't like him, but this doesn't mean that I will be like Drokoski, taking your lives as a joke. Each of you must leave this damn place alive. This is my responsibility. In the end, Adler's mood was a little agitated. He was indeed under a lot of pressure. So many people trusted him to lead them to find the badge and leave here. He could not let these people down. Therefore, now he could only hope that Drokoski would not let him down, and get rid of Wan Quangxiao as soon as possible, and then let the people led by Wan Quangxiao become scattered sand, and then be used by him to achieve their goal of finding the badge. Everything was planned. Adler could only wait for Drokoski's good news, and let Wan Quangxiao's corpse sink into the swamp. Let the swamp crocodile deal with him. Chapter 1354. Although Wan Quangxiao was personally leading the team, the people on the wooden raft still couldn't escape their deep fear of the swamp. Being in an abyss and treading on thin ice couldn't describe how nervous and cautious they were at the moment. Treading on a swamp was truly frightening. Facing the swamp that could swallow them up in the next second, the 30 people on the 2 wide wooden rafts didn't have a relaxed expression on their faces. Wan Guangxiao and Drokoski were under even more pressure. Each of them was responsible for the lives of more than 10 people on their rafts. It might sound simple, but when it came to the point where you were responsible for more than 10 lives, you would realize that it wasn't simple at all. The huge psychological pressure would make it hard for you to breathe. Only people who reached this point could understand the true meaning of the training center's survival training. Only people who could lead a team could understand the true meaning of this survival training. No matter how many leaders there were, they could clearly feel that any decision made under these harsh conditions would require human lives to bear the risk. Only then could they continuously improve and realize how important their decisions were. That's right, the true meaning behind this training was to let the few talented leaders in the training center understand how cruel the so-called special forces were. If they couldn't even bear this little responsibility, they would never be able to grow into a leader. The ultimate goal of the training center wasn't just to train some strong people who could endure hardships and wouldn't frown even if they were to die. Their ultimate goal was to train a group of people who could make their own decisions and take on huge risks. They could become the strongest human warriors behind the human race. Although their basic principle was to protect their country from harm, they were also the main blade in fighting terrorist attacks. The training center would train these people not only for their country's use, but also for the entire world. If there was a need for them and the United Nations asked for help, they would unconditionally choose to take on this responsibility. This was the obligation of any country. The United States was well aware of this situation. They would constantly send people to the training center and had their own ideas. The United States continued to explore outer space and became more and more certain that other than Earth, there were many other planets with the possibility of life. Once these living beings in outer space were highly evolved and highly intelligent animals, there was no guarantee that Earth would not be invaded. If that day came, these people would be the most powerful force to deal with this impossible possibility. The Americans believed that one day there would be an interstellar struggle for hegemony, and that there would be mysterious creatures that would invade Earth. This was because they were certain that once they found a beautiful planet that was habitable and had the ability to reach it and take it for themselves, they would invade. These questions were a bit far-fetched. However, the existence of this training center was to cultivate all-round leaders who could face all kinds of problems. People like Wan Guangxiao, Adler, and Drokoski could enter the side of those people because they had such abilities. Adler only wanted to get rid of Wan Guangxiao because he didn't understand the training center's deeper purpose of training them. If he knew, he definitely wouldn't have done anything to Wan Guangxiao. The reason why the higher-ups still turned a blind eye to Adler's bullying was because they appreciated people like Adler who was willing to give up and scheming. Although this kind of person would give people a particularly sinister feeling, at critical moments, he was absolutely an indispensable talent for mankind. Being able to do these things meant that he was irreplaceable. Translator, WQL editor. Alim. The wooden raft slowly moved forward on the swamp bit by bit. The people on the wooden raft kept their eyes fixed on the muddy surface of the swamp. Any sparkling object in the muddy surface would make them delighted and extremely disappointed. They had been moving forward for about an hour and a half and had completely entered the central swamp, but they still hadn't seen a single badge. How in the world could they find those damn badges? Wan Guangxiao was obviously burning with anxiety. The weather before the storm was often unusually calm, and the current calm seemed to have some meaning. It was too calm. It seemed to give people an illusion that this place was even safer than the outer area. Could it be that even the swamp crocodiles couldn't survive here? Then what kind of creature could produce those bubbles that they occasionally saw before? Why was it that after they entered the swamp, they couldn't see them anymore? Were there no crocodiles here? Obviously, this inference was extremely laughable. This place was the largest source of swamp crocodiles. How could there not be those terrifying big guys? Finally, in the instant when everyone's taut bowstring was about to relax, the muddy swamp ground suddenly exploded with a bang. A huge swamp crocodile that was far larger than the swamp crocodiles in the outer area suddenly appeared in front of Wan Guangxiao's wooden raft. Its huge bloody mouth emitted a rotten stench. This stench made people feel nauseous. Protect the wooden raft. Wan Guangxiao's first reaction was to throw the thick wooden stick into the crocodile's mouth, attempting to use it to support the huge bloody mouth of the crocodile. He was all too clear in his heart. Only by protecting the wooden raft would they have a chance to survive. If the wooden raft was destroyed, not to mention the possibility of other crocodiles in the surroundings, even if there was nothing, the swamp would slowly swallow them up bit by bit. He wouldn't bet his life on someone coming to save them. If they wanted to survive, they had to survive. Gotcha! The enormous strength of the crocodile's bite directly shattered the thick wooden stick that Wan Guangxiao threw in. At the same time, the huge crocodile's mouth seemed to be injured. The immense pain caused it to pounce even more ferociously. Wan Guangxiao didn't hesitate any longer, pulling out his dagger and leaping high, directly pouncing towards the head of the huge crocodile. The lives of the two wooden rafts, he had the responsibility to bring them back. He had to solve this problem before him. Yet at this moment, Wan Guangxiao suddenly noticed that not only did Drokiski not step forward to help him, he actually pulled out his dagger and viciously chopped off the rattan ropes used to bind the wooden raft. What exactly was this bastard doing? Didn't he know that this would cause the deaths of many people? Could it be that this guy wanted to use them as bait to make it easier for them to escape? If that was really the case, then these Russians were really despicable. In his anger, Wan Guangxiao directly pierced the crocodile's two eyeballs with his dagger. The huge and terrifying swamp crocodile was directly stimulated to its weakest spot, rolling away from Wan Guangxiao and mindlessly rushing deeper into the swamp. Wan Guangxiao quickly jumped back onto the wooden raft. He didn't act like the people on the wooden raft, each of them looking at Drokiski with a shocked expression. He quickly found the spare rattan ropes, then ordered the people on the wooden raft to quickly fix the loose ends of the wooden raft. Then, he used manpower to prevent the wooden raft from falling apart. What is the meaning of this? Wan Guangxiao sneered as he looked at Drokiski. I trusted you. Yet, you actually did something like this. You know very well why I did this. Drokiski said coldly. Take a look at the vine that I cut off. Is it yours or not? Look at our wooden raft. Only our wooden raft uses rattan as the knots. Last night, the person in charge of guarding the rattan died. The missing rattan appeared on your wooden raft. Do you need me to explain anything else? Chapter 1355. Wan Guangxiao finally understood why the rattan joint was different. So it was like this? Then who would do such a strange thing? Although there was no evidence, Wan Guangxiao could also understand who asked Drokiski to cooperate with him. That was their scheme. No wonder Drokiski would take the initiative to cooperate with him. Wan Guangxiao never expected him to come with this idea. Just because of this thing, you want to harm so many people? Wan Guangxiao held the cut rattan in his hand. Your target should only be me. Why do you want to put so many people in danger? Don't pretend to be sanctimonious. Drokiski said coldly. You killed my brother for the rattan. Why didn't you think of this problem? Wan Guangxiao, today, I will make you pay with your life. Is there something wrong with your brain? Sawatika scolded angrily. He held the dagger tightly and almost rushed forward. Was this guy really an idiot? Our boss was resting last night. How could he steal your rattan? Think about it carefully. If we didn't teach you how to make a wooden raft and the joint, would you be able to make it? If he wanted to harm you, he didn't need to teach you these things at all. Wan Guangxiao signaled Sawatika to not be so agitated. If they quarreled too loudly, it would cause a new crisis. Don't talk so much. Since he chose to do it, it means that he has his own judgment. That's right. Why did Wan Guangxiao teach them these things? Drokiski was also stunned. Could it be that he really made a mistake in judgment? But the rattan was on Wan Guangxiao's raft. Impossible, he couldn't have made a mistake in judgment. It must be Wan Guangxiao looking for an excuse. He wouldn't be fooled. No matter what you say, I won't believe you, Drokiski said. Drokiski said, your wooden raft can't be fixed anymore. Unless I help you, your people won't be able to complete the repair work while standing on it. Wan Guangxiao, you can only blame yourself for trusting the wrong person. With people standing on the wooden raft and in the swamp, it was impossible to repair it. If Drokiski chose to leave quietly, Wan Guangxiao's wooden raft would break apart sooner or later because the people controlling it had lost their strength. You may leave, Wan Guangxiao said indifferently, but I still have to remind you that there's no one to take care of you on the way back, so you have to be careful. Also, the matter with the Rattan has nothing to do with me. I don't want to explain too much, but if I didn't do it, then I didn't do it. Who was it that told you to come find me, cooperate with me, and then use some method to deal with me, causing me to be in my current predicament? I don't want to know who he is, but let me tell you, you must be careful of this person, because if he can do this to me, he can do the same to you. When that day comes, you will understand what I am thinking. However, even if you regret it by then, it will be too late. Drokiski was indeed wavering, but he could not be sure if this was just Wan Guangxiao's explanation. He could not trust them. At most, he would not trust anyone from this day onwards. That way, he could ensure that he would not be used by others. Just as Drokiski's mind was in a mess, he suddenly sensed a huge impact coming from beneath the wooden raft. Behind them, a huge swamp crocodile had appeared out of nowhere. The impact caused Drokiski, who was not prepared, to fall into the swamp. Although Drokiski was caught off guard, he was not a simple person. At the same time, he also charged toward the huge swamp crocodile. However, God had played a joke on him at the most critical moment. The mud on the wooden raft made his feet too slippery, causing him to be unable to jump high enough. This caused a fatal mistake in his landing. He was unable to jump onto the swamp crocodile's head, but instead, he was lying on the swamp crocodile's upper jaw. The huge swamp crocodile opened its mouth and was about to suck Drokiski into its mouth. At that moment, as long as it bit down, it could easily swallow Drokiski alive. Seeing that the huge stinky mouth was about to bite down, Drokiski let out a roar. His little universe erupted, as he used his arms to block the huge bite of the crocodile. Crocodiles were perhaps the most powerful chewers in the world. This had long been proven by scientific research. Biologists had tested many types of crocodiles, and the estuarine crocodile's bite force was the most shocking. That was only a 5-meter-long estuarine crocodile, but what they were facing now was a mysterious swamp crocodile that was twice the size of the estuarine crocodile, with a body length of more than 10 meters. It lived in a swamp that was even worse. The bite force of the estuarine crocodile could reach 3,700 pounds per square inch, which was equivalent to a bite force of more than 16,000 newtons. Perhaps most people had no idea when they saw these numbers. However, if one knew that when a human was eating steak, the bite force was only 100 to 200 pounds per square inch. Even wild beasts such as coyotes, lions, and tigers could only reach a bite force of 1,000 pounds per square inch, then one would know how amazing the bite force of a crocodile was. Perhaps, other than the great white shark in the ocean, the bite force of a wild beast might be even greater. It was really difficult to find an opponent that was more powerful than a crocodile on land, right? Just like that, Drokiski was able to withstand the force of 3,700 pounds, and he wasn't directly swallowed by the crocodile? Of course, this was impossible. With the strength of a human, even if it was a powerful guy like Drokiski, it was absolutely impossible. Drokiski himself quickly understood. His numb and almost broken arms still persisted in supporting the upper jaw of the swamp crocodile. In front of him, there was also a person sharing the huge bite force with him. And this person was none other than Wan Guangxiao. At the most critical moment, Wan Guangxiao rushed into the mouth of the giant crocodile without hesitation and shared the huge bite force. This force also made his arms numb and painful, and he almost couldn't hold on. Drokiski was completely stunned in an instant. He even lost the ability to react. Just before the giant crocodile attacked again, Wan Guangxiao pulled Drokiski and quickly jumped out of the giant crocodile's mouth. Immediately after, the terrifying sound of the crocodile's huge bite and the swamp mud splashed up behind them. Drokiski's feet stepped on the wooden raft again, and only then did he realize that he had saved his life. He really didn't expect Wan Guangxiao to save him in such a dangerous situation. He owed him a big favor. Let me emphasize, I saved you not because I'm sorry for taking your rattan. I didn't take the rattan, and I didn't use it on our raft. Wan Guangxiao said indifferently, I saved you because of the current situation. No matter which one of us dies, everyone here won't be able to go back alive. Think about your own responsibilities. After saying that, Wan Guangxiao jumped up again and directly attacked the eyes of the giant crocodile in front of him. To make them lose their ability to fight, blinding them was the easiest thing to do. However, this was very dangerous because after you blinded the crocodile's first eye, you had to quickly blind its second eye. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome. This time, the crocodile was exceptionally huge. Even though Wan Guangxiao was experienced, it was very difficult to blind both eyes of the crocodile in just 1 or 2 seconds. He needed help, but now that everyone was in a state of fear, no one had a clear sense of battle. Therefore, he could only gamble with his life. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have a chance to live. But just as he was about to pounce on the crocodile's head, Drokoski followed closely behind. He didn't say much, and only said 2 words, sorry. The 2 of them blinded the left and right eyes of the giant crocodile at almost the same time. The giant crocodile rolled crazily and aimlessly crashed into the depths of the swamp. Chapter 1356. Although it was their first time working together, Wan Guangxiao and Drokoski had a tacit understanding, so they were able to get rid of the swamp crocodile very quickly. This undoubtedly bought valuable time for the others. At least the raft did not fall apart under Sawatika's desperate protection. Wan Guangxiao didn't say anything to Drokoski. He quickly returned to his own wooden raft. No matter if the Russians attacked them or not, he would protect the wooden raft with his life. He was responsible for the lives of everyone on the wooden raft. This was the only thing he could do and the only thing he wanted to do. He saved Drokoski not for them, but for himself. Now, it was up to Drokoski to see if he would appreciate it. Why did you save me? Drokoski asked straightforwardly. If I didn't attack you, maybe you wouldn't be in so much trouble now. If you were all killed by the crocodile, then we wouldn't have any hope of survival. Wan Guangxiao answered without hiding anything. If I saved you, maybe you would know how to repay the kindness and help us. We would still have a 50% chance of survival. If I didn't save you, our chances of survival would be 0. What a straightforward answer. Drokoski really did not expect Wan Guangxiao to be so straightforward. This person was really not hypocritical at all. Now, my judgment is that if you abandon us, our chances of survival will be 0, and without protection behind you, your chances of survival will only be 50%. Wan Guangxiao continued. If you lend us a hand, our chances of survival will be 50%, and with our protection behind you, your chances of survival will be more than 80%. After all, the way back will be safer and the threat will only exist behind us. Drokoski also understood this point. The reason was very simple. Now, even if he did not believe Wan Guangxiao's character, he should consider his brothers. What's more, it was really hard for him to doubt someone who had saved his life. Wan Guangxiao was a straightforward person. He dared to take responsibility for his actions. If he had really killed his men and taken away their vines, he probably wouldn't have tried to cover it up like this. Brothers, help. Drokoski didn't waste any more words and directly passed down the order for everyone to work together to solve the problem of the scattered wooden rafts. 30 people were in the center of the swamp. Wan Guangxiao led some people to repair the wooden raft, while Drokoski led some people to defend against the surrounding dangers. Because it was inconvenient to move in the swamp, it took more than an hour to reattach the raft. In the past hour, Drokoski had gradually realized Adler's scheme. I'm really sorry about this. It was my misjudgment that led to this. I hope you can accept my apology. Drokoski was still very sincere. Also, I want to thank you. Thank you for saving me just now, regardless of our past enmity. Even if you said it was for your own 50% chance of survival, I still have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, me and my brothers. Wan Guangxiao didn't respond. Let bygones be bygones. Since you're able to figure out why this happened and who caused it, then it's a good ending. At least now you're standing up to help me. Even if you're just thinking for your own people, I have to thank you on behalf of my dozen or so brothers for giving them a chance to survive. Drokiski's heart seemed to be blocked by something. It was very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. The feeling of being used by the Americans made him very uncomfortable. And after he suddenly realized that Wan Guangxiao was a person he could make friends with, he found that because of what he did, there was a gap between him and Wan Guangxiao in their hearts. Sometimes, many people don't get to know each other without fighting. But those who could become brothers after fighting were not the majority. Most people would feel resistance in their hearts after fighting. At least, Drokiski couldn't feel any enthusiasm from Wan Guangxiao. At this moment, Wan Guangxiao had no friendship with him at all. He was just constantly making judgments, calculating the odds, and making choices that were beneficial to him. If you don't mind, I want to ally with you again. This time, I'm sincere. Drokiski said, since Ad can use me to deal with you the first time, he can use others to deal with you as well. I've been used by him before, so I'll be on your side. If we unite, he definitely won't dare to act recklessly. Wan Guangxiao smiled slightly. Whether you're sincere or not, I won't choose an ally. After a pause, Wan Guangxiao continued, in this kind of living environment, there are no eternal friends and no eternal enemies. We can work together for a common thing, but I can't guarantee that you won't do anything to me behind my back for your own benefit. Drokiski lowered his head and was silent for a while. Indeed, once bitten, twice shy. If it were him, he wouldn't choose to ally with a person who just wanted to kill them. Even if it wasn't for himself, it was for the sake of his brothers. The risk of this kind of trust was too great. It wasn't that Wan Guangxiao didn't want to get such an alliance. Drokiski's words were indeed true. If they formed an alliance, Ad would definitely not dare to act rashly. However, how could he believe that Drokiski and the others were not as dangerous as Ad? Although Drokowski was used too easily by Ade this time, his mind was very clear. He could change his mind quickly and make new judgments quickly. He knew what was best for him. It was really too dangerous to cooperate with such a person. Wan Guangxiao didn't want these people to sacrifice the lives of the 200 people in his hands. Everyone had their own ideas, so it was difficult to reach a consensus to share the burden. At least Wan Guangxiao wouldn't easily trust anyone now. Even among the people in his own team, there were only a few that he could trust. Most of them followed him because there was profit to be made. It was all because of his decisions. His judgment could increase their chances of survival and give them a chance to get that damn badge. If it weren't for this, how could these people work with him without complaint? Finally, the repair work of the wooden raft was completed. The 30 people from both sides finally carefully embarked on the return journey. It had been more than 5 hours since Wan Guangxiao and Drokiski left with their people. The people who were anxiously waiting for news began to fall into despair. Once the first wave of people went in and there was no news, it would be a huge blow to them. The threat of death was like a lingering dark cloud above their heads. Ad's mood was much more comfortable. Although he was afraid of the death swamp, compared to Wan Guangxiao and Drokiski dying in the swamp, it was just a small matter. After getting rid of these two teams that were a threat to him, everything in the training center would be in his hands. As for looking for the badge in the swamp, he could hold on patiently. He believed that there would always be someone who couldn't sit still. The person who persisted to the end would be able to absorb all the experience. Just like now, the raft battle method would be eliminated. However, just as Ad was feeling proud in his heart, the figures of the returnees finally appeared in the swamp. The originally disappointed crowd also exclaimed in excitement. Everything happened too suddenly. Ad couldn't believe his eyes. 30 people were actually unscathed. Chapter 1357. How could this be? Could it be that Drokoski didn't do anything? Adler was angered by these triumphant fellows, but when Drokoski's gaze landed on him, the moment their eyes met, he felt a strong murderous intent. If it weren't for the current situation where they were facing such a troublesome environment, Adler was sure that Drokoski would definitely come and fight him to the death. There was too much information in that gaze. Adler was sure that Drokoski didn't have any suspicions about Wan Guangxiao at all. All of the problems would be pointed directly at him. Damn it! Adler angrily punched the tree trunk, and the leaves fell, making him seem particularly isolated. Just like Adler's American faction, they seemed so isolated and helpless in the entire camp. Wan Guangxiao and Drokoski relied on their first exploration of the swamp to gain everyone's admiration. Even in the American faction, some people began to question Adler's leadership ability. Although the first exploration of the swamp didn't bring much information, it was absolutely certain that the central swamp was dangerous. At the very least, it was impossible for two teams to establish a foothold in the central swamp. They needed more people to deal with the giant swamp crocodiles that could appear at any time. Fortunately, these crocodiles were not dangerous other than their large size and powerful attack power. Of course, there was also good news, which was that it proved that a large wooden raft could allow 15 people to stay on it for a period of time. As long as there were enough people, they could still defeat the swamp crocodiles and survive under the condition that their defense and attack power were guaranteed. As for the badges, they still didn't see a single one. To complete the survival training, killing crocodiles wasn't enough to prove anything. Finding the badges was the final key. In the face of this problem, everyone could only smile bitterly. After returning, Wan Guangxiao immediately began to reformulate the exploration plan of the swamp, and this time, he excluded Drokoski's people from the exploration plan. He had more than 200 people in his hands. As long as there were enough wooden rafts, they could be divided into 13 teams and enter the swamp to explore according to the corresponding formation. It was still very possible to complete the mission. Of course, there were also people who flinched at the last moment. In the end, only 130 people decided to follow Wan Guangxiao into the swamp again. They were divided into 9 small teams, and the 9 teams advanced in a 9-square grid formation. Wan Guangxiao did not assign himself to the safest support team in the center. Instead, he assigned himself to the first small team to explore the swamp first. The support team in the center was left to Sawatka to take care of. Wan Guangxiao decided to give the central support team to Sawatka, not only because of Sawatka's loyalty, but also because his adaptability was enough to make him qualified for this position. Having him in the center of the team was also a responsibility to everyone. At least, Wan Guangxiao believed that Sawatka wouldn't betray him. As long as he could guarantee this, it was enough. At this time, it was impossible for Drokoski to talk about cooperation and alliance with Wan Guangxiao. Even if Wan Guangxiao wouldn't give him any embarrassing rejection, he would be too embarrassed to go. He could only make up his mind. When Wan Guangxiao and the others set off, he would shamelessly follow behind. If they encountered danger, he would take the initiative to help. As for the badge, he wouldn't be so anxious. If Wan Guangxiao's people could find it, it wouldn't be too late for him to take his own people to slowly search for it. This was Drokoski's only way. The European Union people had the same idea as him. Although they had a large number of people, they weren't enough to arrange into a 9-square grid formation. For this reason, when Drokoski was in trouble, the representative of the European Union came to him to propose a cooperation relationship. This made Drokoski very excited, but in the face of these guys who he didn't know the details of, it was difficult for Drokoski to show his back to these people. Similarly, these people couldn't let Drokoski's people occupy the advantageous position of the 9-square grid formation. Now it could be said that everyone had their own ulterior motives. But in the end, Drokoski and the European Union people reached a consensus. The most dangerous position of the vanguard and the central support team would be in charge of them. The 7 wooden rafts of the European Union were arranged at the back on both sides. This plan should be the most suitable, and the European Union people agreed after consideration. As for the other scattered teams, some simply gave up directly, and some decided to follow the main force without fear of death. Some teams were too small to even form a 15-person team, so they could only seek cooperation with other teams. The factor of distrust in this kind of cooperation was quite large. But in the end, the number of people who participated in the second exploration of the swamp reached 21 wooden rafts, and more than 300 people participated. There were also more than 100 people who announced their complete withdrawal. They wouldn't play with their lives. Adler's American faction still didn't move. Their people were enough to form a 9-square grid formation to explore and move forward. But he didn't march with the main force, and this was due to Adler's caution. He wasn't afraid of death, but he believed that there was a certain amount of danger in the swamp. It was like a minefield. Adler hoped that the other teams would go first, and when the minefield was less, he would bring his people in. This would ensure that his team could have the highest chance of survival. Of course, this also had a disadvantage, and that was that the badges would become fewer and fewer. Adler wasn't the only one who could see this. His people could also see this. Neil was the first to raise this question: if we just follow behind, it will be the hardest to get the badges. Adler, you have to think clearly. Adler wasn't in a hurry. At this point, many people have already given up. I believe that the badges will be enough. If we really can't find the badges, then we'll use other methods to solve the problem. Neil was startled. He realized that Adler's so-called other methods were to snatch the badges that others found. This method was his favorite. He liked the joy of depriving others of their power, especially when it came to stripping Wan Guangxiao's badge. If it really came to that point, Neville would definitely personally take the badge from Wan Guangxiao's hands. With Adler's assurance, Neil finally felt a little more at ease. After all, Adler was Adler. He would always give them a reason to feel at ease. As long as he had Adler's assurance, Neil wouldn't mess around. The second journey finally began. Wan Guangxiao put down the matter of settling accounts with Adler. The first thing to solve was the problem of the badges. His thinking was different from Adler's. After all, Adler's team was an American team that was completely convinced by him. His team, on the other hand, was an international mess. Adler's people could endure for a long time, but only a few people in Wan Guangxiao's team could endure. If he didn't find a way to get the badges as soon as possible, his team would begin to disperse. Once that happened, his biggest team would only exist in name. Only by getting the badges as soon as possible, even if it was only one. Then he could persuade these people to continue to explore with him. A lot of things couldn't just be seen on the surface. It seemed that the biggest team, the strongest team, might not be as cohesive as the smallest team. The more people there were, the more difficult it was to control the team. No one knew this better than Wan Guangxiao. It could be seen when the 9-square grid formation was arranged. Everyone wanted to stand in the safest camp. If it wasn't for him taking the lead, maybe no one would be able to stand in this camp. Want to live, want to be safe, and want to get the badges. How could there be such a good thing? Wan Guangxiao did not hesitate to point this out. The vanguard was the easiest to get the badges. It was also because of this sentence that a part of the people took the initiative to join the vanguard. It was also because of this that it proved that the people in the vanguard were not necessarily the bravest. Perhaps they wanted to get the badges as soon as possible and end the survival training as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.